Hey, everybody, welcome. We're back. Glad to be back. Let's have yet another late night conversation. Let's roll.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to be back with you all, and a lot to update you on. Things are going very, very well, and the world is obviously going in a not so good direction, but we are pushing back and doing great things. So glad that you're here tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. If you would like for me to answer one of your questions in the second half of the show, the best thing to do is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. And many people did that during the time I was away. We have 6 Buy Me a Coffees that were sent while I was away, and I'll be going through all of them tonight. But you can add more to that. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. That is the best way to send your questions. You can also send a super chat. We are monetized, and super chats work. You can do super chats. You can do a Rumble rant if you're on the Rumble. There are other ways to do it. The best way, my preference, would be buymeacoffee.com. We're going to follow our usual format tonight. First, the opening remarks, then the roll call, and then I answer your questions for the remainder of the show. So if there's something for me to comment on, again, buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Well, I guess we'll just jump right into it. We did it. We did it, folks. We did what we set out to do. We had our national convention. We gathered in Chicago, and we did some great, great things. And images of that rally that we did out in front of the Obama Library went all over the world and were seen all across the planet, including on the African continent. But we also did some other great, great things. We did it. We did it, and it went smoothly, and it was a challenge. It was absolutely a challenge this year due to the rising costs of gasoline and the political turmoil and everything, but we did it. We were successful, and this was another win for our community. We are building an anti-imperialist community of resistance, the Center for Political Innovation. We did it. We did it, and it was a great victory. And I am going to show you, I have been editing video all day, and there will be loads and loads of video coming out next week. I have some teasers of video that you haven't yet seen from the activities that went on last week in Chicago that I'll be showing here tonight, some kind of previews. But I just want to say, folks, with the world the way it is, we have the solution. The only thing that's going to get us out of this mess is a real mass movement. And so that's why we took the time to raise the money, to get people together, to carry the heavy boxes and endure. It was a 12-hour all-night drive out to Chicago. It was a 12-hour all-night drive back. That's why we got ourselves together to sleep on air mattresses, to pile into the Airbnb, to set up that convention hall with big banners. We did it. We did it. The Center for Political Innovation is a community full of people that are committed to this project and understand the roots of the problems that we are facing, understand that the only future that America has is a future beyond imperialism, understand that we need a government of action that will fight for working families. And we are different ages, we are different races, different genders. We come from different regions of America, but we came together, we pulled together, and we did it. And I am so happy with our community. I am so happy with what we accomplished. And we moved real mountains. Friday, August 14th was the day that we had two major demonstrations. We had the protest at the Obama Library in the morning. We then protested the French consulate in Chicago. Saturday, we had the convention all day. Sunday, we had a lively Q&A discussion. And then we did some serious planning. The captains of CPI met, and we discussed our major plan for expanding and growing the organization and swinging into action in this fall. We had workshops about all kinds of different things. We talked about recruitment. We talked about different outreach methods. We talked about interventions and our plans for this fall. And, I just got to tell you, we are swinging into action. A great deal was accomplished. And I'm telling you, if you are like me and you find world events right now to be horrifically depressing, with Donald Trump, who promised peace and is bringing us more and more into war, with people spreading delusional ideas about economics. We're certainly going to get into that later tonight. If you are the kind of person that finds the political scene to be just unbearable, get involved. Because our community is what gives people hope. And I just got to tell you that. So today, I was going through some of the footage that was shot by myself, some of the footage that was shot by Penny, of the rally we did outside the French consulate in downtown Chicago to honor the great Ibrahim Traore and to use him as an example of the kind of government that we will have. I'm going to put that footage on. I think when I do the video itself, it'll be much more concise. This is just a draft of that video. I've got a keynote of some of the convention stuff. We're going to get into all kinds of stuff. But basically, I'm just going to go through. I have a list of things to talk about. I have a couple videos to show of stuff we did during the CPI National Convention. I've got some other news and comments I want to make. And then we'll do the roll call. And then I'll answer your questions. And that will be that. But be sure to keep your eye on the YouTube channel because lots and lots of video is going up from everything that happened. So we're going to start with kind of the draft video of our rally in downtown Chicago at the French consulate saying, France out of Africa. Here we go. A little bit late, but we're getting to the French consulate. So Noah's been doing a great job as our driver.
Is that where the consulate is?
I think so, yeah, 205. So we got it tight. We got it tight.
One last one.
Okay, here. Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out here today because the French consulate is here, and we say, France out of Africa! France out of Africa! France out of Africa! We are here because this great African leader, Ibrahim Traore, the leader of the Union of Sahel States, has led a revolution in his home country of Burkina Faso. And they're building the country up, raising the people up. And the French are furious about it. They want to slip their colonial fangs back into the West African states of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. And we're here to oppose that. And we're here to say, hands off Africa. Hands off Africa. And the same for Ukraine. Ukraine out of Africa. Ukraine out of Africa. France out of Africa. Long live Traore. Long live Traore.
So I'd like to start with saying that all imperialism is bad imperialism. There's no such thing as good imperialism. And I'd like to dispel the myth that there were any good guys in World War I. The U.S. was not a good guy. Britain was not a good guy. France was not a good guy. Nor was Germany, nor was Austria-Hungary in World War I. They were all just competing against one another in order to obtain control of world markets and trade routes. That's essentially all World War I is about. And we can see that there may be some cases in French history in which they did try to provide some form of nuclear energy to another country. For instance, in the case of Iraq, they did develop a nuclear plan. However, as soon as the U.S. stomped its feet and wished to invade the country, they stepped back, and they allowed Iraq to get destroyed by the United States, and any power plant that they built to be destroyed along with it. And but still, French bankers and French financiers still gained significant profits off of the invasion of Iraq, there's no doubt about it. And there may be certain divisions in the ruling class that may favor certain people in different instances of history, but ultimately it gets down to whether you're a force for good or a force for bad.
Hands off Africa! Hands off Africa! Friends out of Africa! Friends out of Africa! Friends out of Africa! Africa for Africa! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Friends out of Africa! Friends out of Africa! Friends out of Africa! Friends out of Africa! Down with French imperialism! Down with French imperialism! Down with French colonialism! Down with French colonialism! Hands off of Africa! Get your bloody hands off of Africa! 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 Long live Traore!
Why we're out here because the U.S., the French, they are part of NATO. NATO takes my tax dollars that I work hard for to try to take this man down with my tax dollars. Meanwhile, we have potholes in Chicago, the train erosions all over the nation. It's terrible. So, like I said, Ibrahim Traore is my hero personally. You should look up to this man. This man has helped his own people in a span of like 5 years or less. That's incredible. So, Ibrahim Traore, we look up to you. Hands off Africa! Hands off Africa! Hands off Traore! Hands off Traore! Hands off Africa! Hands off Africa!
Down with French colonialism!
Down with French imperialism!
Down with French imperialism!
Hands off Africa!
Hands off Africa!
Hands off Africa!
Hands off Africa!
France out of Africa!
France out of Africa!
France out of Africa!
He's about healthcare for his people.
That's right.
Resources and nationalizing all the resources he has for his people.
That's right.
And meanwhile, here in the United States, we can't get our roads fixed. We have no health care. We have no free housing. And we still have people homeless out in the street.
Hands out of Africa!
Hands out of Africa!
Hands off 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 Africa!
Long live Traore!
Long live Traore!
Long live Traore!
Long live Traore!
We're out here in front of the French consulate. We're here to say that Ibrahim Traore is right and that AFRICOM is wrong. That the African people are right and that the French colonialists are wrong. And let's make no bones about it. There's a reason why in mainstream media, if you go and you look at Western media, they'll tell you this man's a dictator. Why do they call Ibrahim Traore a dictator? Because he's an African leader who actually cares about the people of Burkina Faso. He's leading a movement on the African continent for development. development. He's brought the Russian military in to defend against the terrorists backed by the United States. He's kicked out the French imperialists. He's kicked out the U.S. imperialists. He's created a strong country with development and food and housing and healthcare and education. He's a great leader for the African continent. We need a leader like this in the United States. We need a leader who will stand up to Wall Street, who will stand up to the Zionists, who will stand up to the bankers, who won't cower before money and interest, and who will do what's best for the American people. We could learn so much. We could learn.
How is it possible that in a country like in Burkina Faso, a poor country, they're able to house and feed people, and we have people on the streets? Why do we have people on the streets? Why is medical care unaffordable? Let's ask ourselves this. It's our money, and where does it go? It goes to munitions factories.
I'm not either. I was hoping that maybe he would do some of what he says about more peaceful relations with other countries, but sadly he's done this horrible war against Iran and against everything he campaigned on, so absolutely not.
Okay.
Thank y'all so much. So again, my social activist leader back home in Texas, I'm going to show her this video because she understands a lot of this, right? So I'm with our attend Friendship West Baptist Church. Dr. Rachel Payne. Okay, cool. I just want to okay.
This thing, but if you want to know what we believe, go to cpiusa.org.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
What's
your name and your...
My name is Dana Williamson.
And how do you want us to find you on social media?
Yeah, you can go to chatwithlady.com.
Okay.
Chatwithlady.com. Dr. Dana Williamson.
And I'm Penny Arcos.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Penny.
Yeah, I have two.
The response that we are getting to our rally out here about Ibrahim Traore is phenomenal. So many people giving us thumbs up, so many people applauding, so many people stopping to film us with their phones. I can't even believe it. We went into CVS to buy water, and the two women behind the counter said to us, "We love Ibrahim Traore, and we loved Gaddafi, and this shit has got to stop." It was amazing. The amount of popular public response we're getting to our protests supporting this great African leader is amazing.
I understand. I agree. Are you off tomorrow? Because we're doing a convention tomorrow.
Well, we should be so lucky to have a dictator like this. Yeah. This man is building public housing. He's feeding his people. Creating a quality public health care system. Quality education, which is free. Supporting farmers. Raising wages. What's happening here in the United States? What's happening here? They're destroying public housing. Our medical care system is horrible, the most expensive in the world, and you know what? Number one cause of death is going to the hospital in the United States, medical malpractice. Our educational system costs 30 years of your life to pay back loans for an education which is substandard. Our bridges are falling apart. It is outrageous. And the farmers, who's supporting farmers? They're putting data centers in the middle of the Midwest. You know why? Because they're going to starve you. Are they going to pay higher prices for food? Or are you going to starve? They're poisoning our water. Think about this. Who's supporting workers? Nobody. For 20 years, the minimum wage hasn't changed.
Right.
This man is a dictator. No, this man is a hero.
That's right.
And you know why we're not rebuilding bridges? Not because we're a poor country, because this is a poor country. And if they can build, we can build.
Yeah.
But because it doesn't make money for the Wall Street bankers and for the bankers of the City of London. That's right. This is our country. And we need to do what the Africans are doing in Burkina Faso, which is to take back our government. Take back our tax money. And to go to us. 7 trillion went to the banks. Imagine what we could have done with 7 trillion. Again, build a workers' movement. Political innovation.
And we are out here in Chicago to let you know that this wealth around here does not benefit you. What does it do? It impoverishes you. It puts you into debt. Do we have free housing here in Chicago or in New York where I am from? No. This man, Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, has given his people free housing, free education, employment opportunities. He is building fisheries. He is building chocolate farmers. He is building an economy that is going to benefit his people and the people of Mali and Niger in Africa.
Answer that for me. Why do they want military bases in Africa? Because Africa is rich.
Yep.
We say the resources of Africa belong to the Africans.
Yeah.
Just like they toppled Gaddafi, who built up Libya into a prosperous country that provided health care and education. They want to do the same thing to Ibrahim Traore. We say no. We say Africa out of Africa. We say the resources of Africa for Africans.
Yeah. Woo! France out of Africa.
Are the French humanitarians?
No.
Is that why they want troops in Africa?
No.
Does right for his people. He doesn't build bombs. No. He's all about growth. Growth for his people. He ain't about kowtowing to imperialists, colonialists. He isn't about, oh, French, you want this country back here? No. That's not what he's about. He's about healthcare for his people. Resources and nationalizing all the resources he has for his people. And meanwhile, here in the United States, we can't get our roads fixed. We have no health care. We have no free housing. And we still have people homeless out in the streets. That's not what Ibrahim Traore is about. No. And he doesn't care how many attempts are made on his life, fighting to fearless free from France, US, NATO, whatever. He will do it in the face of all who do not want him to do it at all. Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Down to French imperialism! Down with French imperialism! Down with French colonialism! Down with French colonialism! Down with the Epstein class! Down with the Epstein class! Long live Ibrahim Traore! A real leader for his people!
Ibrahim Traore, a multipolar français. Down with French imperialism.
Yeah.
Down with French colonialism.
Yeah.
Long live Ibrahim Traore.
Live Traore.
Hands off Africa.
Hands off Africa.
We need a government of action that fights for working families in America. That time is coming. That's why we're out here today, because we care about the American working class. We don't care if you're left or right. We don't care what politics you're in. As long as you know there's something wrong in our country and everything is getting worse and worse, as time is getting harder, why the economic system is failing, because our leaders like Trump, Biden, they're the ones who put us in this hellhole right now, what we have in this whole country. So, hands off Africa!
Hands off Africa! States, right? What's our primary focus economically? What is it?
War?
It's war. What are we the best at? We're the best at war. We're also the best at street violence, prisons,
School shootings.
We actually have private prisons for profit.
Yeah.
There are people that are in prison right now as we speak because they had one marijuana cigarette, and people are making profits off of that.
Wow.
It's disgusting, right? There's a presidential candidate that helped make that happen, who obviously didn't win, but we didn't get anything better, did we?
No.
We didn't get anything better. How come Burkina Faso can have such a great president? Because he's focused on economic development. He's focused on helping the working people and the average person and not just the rich people at the top. That's why he's a popular president. He stands up to the anti-imperialists that, the colonials that from France, we might come back, Macaroon, from France, that guy. What a joke. He's extremely unpopular. How is he still president?
France is democracy, they tell us.
It's a democracy, that's it. But isn't it a republic democracy? Like a small group of people make all the most important decisions for everybody else. Why is that? How come your vote doesn't count? Your vote should count. We deserve a president like this that focuses on economic development. What have we been doing for decades? We've been building military equipment and selling military equipment to kill people. Now how is that helping you and me? It's not. We need a real movement, not a fake movement like the Democratic and Republican parties try to tell us and lure us into in different ways, but a real movement bringing people together with common interests that demands a government of action that works for us. That includes you guys. That includes you guys. I'm including you in this conversation. And all of these working people here, do you think you share in any of this wealth that's around you, all around you? No. And you should go to the French embassy if you want to find out more about this man. They probably know a lot about it. And they're located right here, I guess, right? Yeah. So if you want to learn more about this guy, you can also go to the website, the Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org. And we're not saying you have to join us or give us a donation, even though that would be nice to support our work. I'm here from Los Angeles. We have people here from the Pacific Northwest, from the East Coast, New York City, New Jersey, as well as your hometown, Chi-Town people, right here. Because we care about you. We care about this country.
Terroristic, so-called Islamic fighting that's going on in Western Africa, we can actually save the money for ourselves, get some nice things for us, for our children, for our families, and have a better America that's actually peaceful. We could make America a good country that has peaceful relations, that gives things and receives things from other countries, and is no longer the bully. But right now, unfortunately, the Anglo-American Empire is seated in D.C., and so many horrible things are coming from here. They're bombing.
Build the peace bridge.
Build the peace bridge. Build the peace bridge. Build the peace bridge.
Build the peace bridge. Build the peace bridge. Build the peace bridge.
Build the peace bridge.
President Trump.
Debt when you retire. That's nonsense. We need a government of action that allows us to participate in this wealth.
That's
there's
right.
An abundance of wealth here. Well, how do you think all these buildings got built?
Gabby's next.
Because there's not abundance?
No.
Of course not. There is abundance. And you're not sharing it.
Hero because he stands up to French imperialism, U.S. imperialism against all odds.
That's right.
That he can build a strong country and kick the French and the Americans out of Africa. The world is changing, the imperialists are going down.
Yeah.
You can fight back in this country, and you can have a better future for yourself. You gotta get together, you gotta organize, you gotta find out from the Center for Political Innovation, because we're out here doing stuff.
Yeah.
The rest aren't doing it, nobody else is doing it. We're doing it, and you can do it too if you want a better future.
Yeah.
We need a government of action that fights for working people.
Yeah.
French out of Africa.
French out of Africa.
NATO out of Africa. AFRICOM out of Africa.
Yeah. Out of Africa.
NATO out of Africa.
We need a government of action that fights for working people. Check out the Center for Political Innovation. Get involved. Take action. Do something because it's your future.
Yeah. All right. So that was, that's a rough draft of the video. I'm obviously going to edit a bit more, make it a little bit more crisp, but that was just kind of a rough draft of the video that I'll be posting later this week of the rally we did outside the French consulate to support the great African leader, Ibrahim Traoré. That was really, really great. And I mean, it was great. All of our members took turns getting on the bullhorn. The people, you saw the people going by filming us, the people going by very interested. There was a lot of support for us. It was really, really a great thing that we did. And we had the whole team there. It was really, really tremendous. And I've got a couple other videos that I'm going to show you tonight. One more that is kind of a teaser because it hasn't been made public yet. And we're also going to show the video from the Obama library. So, you know, I'm just going to keep going with all the things I wanted to talk about tonight. I've got just a couple issues I'm going to address. Just a reminder that if you do have something you would like me to talk about in the second half of our show, please go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin and send your questions. 6 people sent questions while I was away at the convention. So that would be great. And if you want to get involved in this kind of stuff, David Fox is sending you the link. You can join CPI. 5 people joined last week, you know, and I guess our convention had an impact. And, you know, people are joining. We're building a real movement, and it's very, very exciting. So one thing I did want to mention, I did hear that Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate for president, is facing some serious criminal charges right now. And if you read the charges against Jill Stein, they're particularly outrageous. They're claiming that Jill Stein, who is the Green Party candidate for president, ran against Hillary Clinton. Jill Stein ran against Kamala Harris, took a pro-Palestine platform. A lot of Muslims voted for her because the Democrats refused to make any noise supporting the pro-Palestine protest. Jill Stein has been charged, and they're claiming that she kicked a police officer in the groin. They're claiming that she engaged in this all kind of like intense, karate fighting against the police at a pro-Palestine rally in Missouri. The whole thing is ridiculous. And she's going to have to go to Missouri and face these criminal charges. And we support Jill Stein. She supported the Uhuru movement. She stood up for Palestine. She has challenged the Democrat Party. So we are going to have to raise defense and support for Jill Stein against these crazy charges that she is facing, because the charges don't look legit. They are completely bullshit. And we need to stand with Jill Stein against these charges, because it looks like the Democrats are going to try to throw her in jail because they very much don't appreciate somebody running against them in the elections. Yes, it is absolutely insane. And so we're going to have a statement on our website very shortly supporting Jill Stein. We're going to raise her case, because it's particularly crazy that they are coming for Jill Stein, that she's got an arrest warrant out for her and they want to throw her in jail. They're claiming that she's, if you know Jill Stein, she's an older lady. She's not too big. The idea that she kicked a cop in the groin, give me a break. Give me a break. She's an old hippie. She's a doctor. She's into natural medicine, and she's a peace activist, and she's not kicking cops in the groin. Give me a break. So we're going to have to do everything we can to support Jill Stein against these charges. I wanted people to be aware of that. Now, the other thing I thought I would talk about before we get to the next point. So you all know I wrote this book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For? I wrote this book, and we distributed it in bulk over the last couple years. We distributed it in bulk in Palestine protests, in neighborhoods in Chicago. We did everything we can to get this book, which is kind of a popular account of the Houthis, Ansar Allah, the organization in Yemen that's fighting against the Zionists. David likes the book. He says, great book. I'm glad to hear it, and, thank you. Well, I wanted to let you know I just got my first copies of the Farsi edition of the book. People are reading it in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Wow. I emailed the PDF to a friend of mine in Iran who said that he wanted it to be available to Iranians and that he was translating it. Now I hear back months later, as this war is raging between the United States and Iran, it's in print. People in Iran are reading the book on the Houthis. I think it's interesting because the Iranians probably know way more about the Houthis than I do, because it's another Shia Muslim movement, etc. But, you know, they're interested. What is a group of Americans talking about Ansar Allah? What do they have to say? And I'm very humbled by this. And I'm very inspired that our book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For, is now available in Farsi, and people in Iran are reading the book. And that shows that what we do here in America, our anti-imperialist organizing in America, is very, very important, the work that we do. It's very, very, very important. And, you know, this was a victory for CPI, and it shows how important our work is. We have distributed the English language edition of the book in bulk across the country. 4,000 or 5,000 copies have gone out. We went to the People's Conference for Palestine and distributed the books. We distributed it in Chicago at, you know, Stop War on Iran rallies. We distributed it at mosques, at community centers. We have given this book out everywhere we can. We want the American people to know who the Houthis, Ansar Allah, are, and the story of this anti-colonial movement in one of the poorest countries in the world. And it seems to have had an impact. So now people are reading this book in a completely different language. In the Farsi language, people are reading the book. So yeah, we need to figure out how to get you some books in Australia. You know, this shows that our movement is certainly having an impact. Anti-imperialism is very, 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 very relevant in our times. And, you know, thank you, Alex in Brazil. Thank you, everyone who's watching tonight. I just wanted to let people know about that. I guess the next thing I'll do is I'm going to show you some footage that has not yet been seen. I'm going to give you kind of a teaser of the opening video of the opening video from the convention. I'm in the process of editing. I gave a two-hour presentation. I guess it's only an hour and 40 minutes. An hour and 40-minute presentation, kind of an annual report to kick off the CPI convention. Not going to show it all to you here. I'm just going to show you the very, very beginning. And I have a lot of editing. I'm editing graphics and historical images and graphs and, you know, putting the quotes that I use, the quotes from various world figures. I'm putting all of that in there. It's going to take me a long time to edit the piece. And I'm going to be putting it up as one long piece, and then I'm going to be putting up little individual clips from it. You know, we're going to give you a lot from my presentation. We also had great presentations from Matt Weinglass, great presentations from Reverend Mama Joy, that is a minister who came and spoke. We're going to have great video from Penny and Dan. Noah gave a great talk. There's a lot of video to get through from the convention. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a teaser, if you will, of the opening video of the opening talk. But before I do that, I do want to remind you, if you have anything for me to talk about in the second half of our show, go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin and send it. 6 people sent their questions during the break, and I'm going to answer all those questions tonight. If you're watching this later, you can send in your questions as well, but we do want to give people an opportunity to ask their questions. So yeah, this is the video of the very beginning of the convention on Saturday, August 15th. The full video of my keynote address will be out soon, as well as all the other great presentations that were there. So here we go. This is not yet seen. This is a teaser, if you will, of the opening video of the convention.
Okay, everybody. Welcome to the 2026 National Convention of the CPI Center for Political Innovation. First, I want to give a thank you to the Colectivo Ecuatoriano Patria Grande for owning this beautiful space that we're using right here. I hope everyone has had coffee, bagels, everyone's comfortable, everyone's having a good time. My name is Michael Martinez. I'm from Miami. I'm Cuban American, born in Miami. But unlike most Cuban Americans from Miami, when I was a young teen, I joined the movement for socialism in 1997. In the early 2000s, I started working with the Antonio Macel Brigade and the Miami Coalition to end the U.S. embargo of Cuba. And directly after that, I don't know if a lot of people remember, but in Venezuela, there was something big that happened. It was the Bolivarian Revolution, started by Hugo Chavez. In 2003, I founded the Bolivarian Circle of Miami, along with a lot of other comrades. And in 2005, I started the Bolivarian Youth, which took 11 delegates from Miami to the World Youth Festival in Caracas, Venezuela, the 16th World Youth Festival, where there was over 700 U.S. delegates, and there was delegates from people all around the world. And I've been supporting and in solidarity with the progressive movement in Latin America ever since and all around the world. I met Caleb in 2007 at the U.S. Social Forum in Atlanta, Georgia, where we worked together on a forum on the legacy of Che Guevara. Immediately, I knew that I saw a comrade in Caleb. Even though he was much younger than me, he was such a bright person. Ever since, we've become friends and comrades, where we were both in the same youth organization called FIST, Fight Imperialism, Stand Together. So we've been fighting imperialism for a long time. Not only that, in 2010, Caleb attended a walkout in Collinwood High School where his video recording of a police brutality incident ended up in a young black woman being acquitted of falsely assaulting a police officer. From 2011 to 2015, Caleb was a media spokesperson for former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, who a lot of you may remember. He's done a lot of important work in the United States. And from all of this, finally in 2020, Caleb founded the Center for Political Innovation. And I have come around, which I have now joined, and I'm proud to be a member of the Center for Political Innovation. I just want to talk a little bit about the situation in my home country, in Cuba, which is right now is suffering a oil blockade and the worst sanctions, the harshest sanctions in the history, in the known history of humanity. And the situation is so dire. There's power outages almost 22 hours a day, where people don't have access, their food and since they don't have any power, they can't keep food in a refrigerator. There's no air conditioning, and the biggest problem with this is hospitals, schools. There's children who are people on dialysis, elderly. These sanctions kill people. These sanctions are genocidal. And while people are coming in solidarity with Cuba to try to stop the genocide, the same way while we're coming in solidarity with the people of Gaza, who are also facing a horrible genocide, the United States is trying to stamp out the solidarity movement. And just recently, the Cuba solidarity movement was targeted by the FBI. But I'm proud to say that CPI is not afraid, and we're going to keep continuing, and we'll never stop our solidarity, neither with the people of Cuba, the people of Venezuela, the people of Palestine, all people around the world. So these gatherings are important. CPI celebrated Comandante Fidel Castro's birthday just a couple of days ago, which may seem just like a small forum, but for the people of Cuba who are suffering the embattlement of these sanctions, to them it's a morale boost to know that they have friends within the belly of the beast. Well, I'm not going to go on because I just wanted to introduce Caleb, but such a brilliant leader. I've known Caleb, like I said, since 2007, and since the very first day I've been impressed by this man. So I'm happy to be working under his leadership, and as you can see how knowledgeable he is, all of these books. Look how many books were written by Caleb on so many subjects. I mean, a more well-read comrade I haven't met yet. I haven't met yet. So I tell all people, the best work, come and do the best work, be effective, not just a Wevolutionary online, but on the streets where it matters. Join the CPI so you won't just talk the talk, but you'll walk the walk with us. And we're reaching not just the bitter, disenfranchised people from different oppressed communities, but we're reaching the entire working class. And that's important because we need unity. We need everyone's unity in order to affect real change. And that's what we're doing with CPI. So I don't want to keep taking up more space. I want to introduce to you our leader, our co-chair, or president, Caleb Maupin.
I think we should all take this opportunity to stretch a little bit, stand up, stretch out. We can find security in the passage of time. Today is Saturday, and I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but every Saturday in my entire life has been followed by a Sunday, and every Sunday in my entire life has been followed by a Monday, and every Monday in my life, believe it or not, has been followed by a Tuesday. And every Tuesday in my life, believe it or not, has been followed by a Wednesday. And I don't know what tomorrow will be like, but I can guarantee you it will be unlike any other Sunday that has ever existed before and ever happened before. And this is the kind of thing that humans do that brings us security. Since the beginning of time, human beings have been trying their hardest to make sense of a very insecure world, a world full of chaos and unpredictability and tension and frightening things. We've been trying to find security in the patterns that exist. So you think about ancient human beings who looked up at the stars, made up stories about the different constellations, think about the way they track the seasons. This is something that human beings do in order to find security. We find security in patterns and trying to predict what's happening next and trying to make sense of the world as it is. This is the human experience. It's a battle that we're all waging. How can we find security in times with so much insecurity? How can we find peace in a world with so much chaos? How can we know that we're safe? This is the human experience. going back thousands and thousands of years to the time people were living in caves all the way right up to now. And we at the Center for Political Innovation, our message, if it really got down to anything, was that human beings can change the world and have changed the world and are the only species that has really ever changed the world. Other species simply interact with their environment, but mankind forces the environment to serve him, and by doing so, masters the environment and reinvents it. And that's something you can find in the book of Genesis. That's something you can find in the writings of Frederick Engels and Marx. Human beings are the species that reinvents and changes the world around them. And that is what defines humanity. And no other species can do what human beings can do. And we live in a society that does everything it can to disempower people, to make people feel like they don't have the ability to change things, to reduce people to what we call living biologically, right? A plant in your garden is alive, but it's not really changing the world. It's not fighting and asking big questions. A plant is just alive, technically, in the biological sense, but it's not really alive. And, you know, a mouse, a rat, it's alive, but it's not asking big questions. It's not changing the world around it. It just kind of exists. It's living only in the biological sense. But what we seek to do with the Center for Political Innovation is to challenge people to transcend merely a biological existence and to take on a truly human existence. And we have found a huge amount of inspiration in the writings of Wallace Wattles. And Wallace Wattles, I got to tell you, was a CPI member 3 years ago who told me about this great socialist Christian who lived in 1900, 1910, around that time, and wrote a lot of self-help books. Way a long time ago, a good friend of Eugene Debs. I have found his work to be so inspiring. And so we'll start out with a passage from Wallace Wattles. He says, "There are two attitudes a man may take. One makes him like a football. It has resilience. It reacts strongly when force is applied to it, but it originates nothing. There is no power within it. Men of this type are controlled by their circumstances and by their environment. Their destinies are decided by things external to themselves. But the other attitude makes man like a flowing spring. Power comes out from the center of him. He has within him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. He radiates force. He is felt by his environment. The principle of power within him is in constant action. He is self-active. He hath life within himself." That's Wallace Wattles talking about what it means to take on a truly human existence, what it means to find the power within yourself to change the world. That's Wallace Wattles' words. And I'm going to go over everything we've done this year because we are an active organization. I liked how Mike put it. He said we're not what does he say? Wevolutionaries. We're revolutionaries, right? We're telling people that you can actually do something. You don't have to just doom scroll and read about how bad the world is and tear down somebody else online. You can actually step outside and not only touch grass, but take up a sign and take up a bullhorn and challenge people and challenge the world. So I'm going to go over here the list of things that we have done so far in the year of 2026. And keep in mind, it's only August. I know there's people here in the audience who might want to chime in and talk about some of what they've done. So, you know, if you want to shout out a couple things or whatever. On the 3rd of January, the day that Nicolas Maduro was kidnapped from Venezuela, within hours of the kidnapping, CPI members were in the streets condemning it. Gavin was in the streets of Davenport, Iowa, standing against it. Penny was in the streets of Minneapolis, standing against it. We had members in New York City who were in the streets. Just hours after Nicolas Maduro was kidnapped, CPI was out there condemning this illegal action by the United States. And then, on the 10th of January, the event was on the 11th, but on the 10th we were all gathered, kind of like we are here for our New Jersey event, and we felt like if we're all so close to the jail where Maduro is being held, we got to do something about it. Yep. So that is your teaser. Keep an eye out for that video. It's going to be almost 2 hours long of the presentation. I'm preparing all kinds of, graphics and images, and it's going to be great. Actual footage of events discussed. I'm editing that video. And it's going to take me a long time, but, that video is coming out. And, the CPI convention this year, the 7-day program and the convention and the protests we did the day before and everything was absolutely magical. So keep your eye out for the video. There's going to be a lot of video on this channel and on the CPI YouTube channel coming out in the following few days. I'm getting through it as quickly as I can. Just so many great things that happened. You're going to love what you see. So I've got a couple other things that I want to talk about here before we move on. And I think the last thing I'll do in the opening half is I'll show the Obama Library video. Then we'll do the roll call, and then I'll answer people's questions, which there were quite a few questions that came while I was away. The first thing I want to make clear, just so you all know, next year's convention, we picked the date already. It's going to be in Los Angeles, California, where we have a good group of people, Stephen and Tim and Ishmael and Dan, and, we have a great, great crew of people out there. And we are going to have our convention in LA on August 7th, 2027. So mark your calendars. That date has already been set. And I want to take this time to thank everyone who made a financial contribution to make the convention that just happened, everything we just did in Chicago, possible. It really was a tight squeeze this summer. It was a tight squeeze this year. And last week I was quite nervous about making sure we had all the money we needed for everything. But we did it. And I am so relieved and I am so overjoyed by how the convention went. We have a great, great team of people. And, Gabby is in the chat. Gabby, earlier we showed you in front of the French consulate. You were on the bullhorn, killing it. It was amazing. Mike was there this year. People from New York, people from Chicago, people from Minneapolis, people from California, people from the Pacific Northwest. Oh, man, it was amazing. It was amazing. Our whole team did an amazing, amazing job, and I am just absolutely overjoyed with how the convention went, and that's what we have to focus on. Right now, the news is quite depressing. Donald Trump is just getting worse every day. We have got to focus on the movement that we are building. The movement that we are building of people who get it, people who understand, and I am so excited. The captains, we have this plan to build the organization. I don't want to get into that too much tonight. But anyway, so keep your eye out for the videos from the convention. That whole speech that I gave will be up online. There'll be different segments and all of that. So I got a couple other things I do want to mention before we put on the video from the Obama Library. So I guess, I can just show this. Donald Trump is getting worse every day. And this was a clip. I guess he just said this like an hour ago. But I think you all will find it amusing, to say the least. So here we go.
But communism is the single greatest threat to our country in history, including World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. And that's why we're going to crush the radical Democrats at the ballot box this November. And we're going to defeat communism in America once and for all. We're going to defeat it. It's never worked. It's dirty, it's filthy, it's unhappy. Did you ever see a happy communist? You ever see a communist laugh? I never saw it. I've known communists, they don't laugh. They're very unhappy people. We want to be happy.
What the hell is that? I don't know. There's just so much complete silliness in this clip. But I guess we'll just go through it point by point.
Your front row, Judge. But communism is the single greatest threat to our country in history, including World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. And that's why we're going to crush the radical Democrats at the ballot box.
Okay, so he's claiming that the DSA faction of the Democratic Party, Zoran Mamdani, whose wife was involved in trying to overthrow the Syrian government, Zoran Mamdani, whose mother is a Hollywood film director. He's claiming that AOC and Zoran Mamdani are more of a threat than the Nazis in the Second World War, than the September 11th attacks. This is completely silly. I mean, even if you accept that there was, in fact, that these people are communists, which they're not. The idea that somehow they're more of a threat than, wars we've gotten into that have killed millions of people. I mean, Mamdani supposedly is going to give us free buses, and in 2 years, they're going to have one grocery store that's sponsored by the government open up, but that's more of a threat. I'm not going to sit here and defend the DSA. And I mean, the DSA is complicated, right? They're friendly to us right now, which we appreciate. It's a nuanced organization. There are many different factions within it. But the idea that the DSA is, number one, communist, which they are not. Number two, a threat to America. I mean, that's just so ridiculous. I don't know where to begin. So that's the first point, right, is that DSA are not communists, and they're also not a huge threat to American freedom. I mean, I've been living here under Mamdani. I haven't really noticed much of a change in the city of New York. So, yeah, I mean, wow. Okay, next point.
This November, and we're going to defeat communism in America once and for all. We're going to defeat it. It's never worked. It
never worked, right? What was Russia like before Stalin came in? Who industrialized Russia? Who wiped out illiteracy? Who built the world's largest power plants? Who made Russia a modern superpower? Who invented space travel? It's never worked anywhere. Never worked, right? Never worked. Take a look at this. This is an image of Shanghai, and this is the Communist Party's leadership of China's major port city. Look at communism not working. Oh wow, look at it just isn't working. Just not working. Oh my God, it's just not working. If you don't privatize everything, you don't have the free market, it just doesn't work. Oh, look at it. Look at communism not working. Oh man, it's just not working. Oh, it's just failing. Oh my God, it's not working. It's not working. Oh man. Just keeps not working. Look at all that not working. Yeah, in China, where the government has 5-year economic plans, where there's no private property rights, and even private corporations have to do what the state central planners say, where there's massive state-run industries, where most of the private corporations are controlled by the government, like Huawei Technologies. When the state is involved in organizing and building, it just doesn't work. I mean, look at that. I mean, look at this. I mean, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I mean, there's just no success going on there, right? It just doesn't work. Oh, I mean, look at this, right? It's just not working. There's just no success there. I mean, it just doesn't work. I mean, you just say this shit. You just say this dumb stuff over and over again. It doesn't make it true. It does not make it true. I mean, this is, China, China, where the government plans out the economy, where the government has state-run industries, where they have a ruling Marxist-Leninist party that makes 5-year economic plans, where, the state is involved in directing even the private companies. Oh, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Look at all the not working there. I mean, it's just so ridiculous, right? Russia and China before the communists, Russia and China after the communists. That's a failure. But it just never worked anywhere, according to Trump. It never worked. So let's continue.
Dirty, it's filthy, it's unhappy.
It's dirty and it's filthy. Well, this is the video that we in CPI, this is for the Juche Study Group. This is North Korea, a country that, is under the boot of U.S. imperialism. And take a look. This is dirty and filthy. Take a look at North Korea. This is what he says is dirty and filthy. Yeah, just filthy. Look at that. I mean, does this look so filthy, so dirty, right? Look at all this. I mean, this just so dirty and filthy, filthy and dirty. Oh my God, just so dirty. Oh my God. I mean, look at all this, right? I mean, Pyongyang is just so dirty, right? Wow. I mean, it's just, what do you say to this? I mean, it's just so dirty, filthy, right? I mean, yeah, just so dirty and filthy. Look at that. Oh my gosh, so dirty, so filthy. Yeah, there you go. There you go. What else does he say?
Did you ever see a happy communist? You ever see a communist laugh? I never saw it. I've known communists. They don't laugh. They're very unhappy people. We want to be happy.
I don't know. Does she happy? She look happy to you? Right? I mean, I don't know. Does she look happy? She looks like she's smiling to me. She looks pretty happy. I don't know. She seems to be quite happy. They look pretty happy. Those kids look pretty happy. I've seen a smiling communist. Seen a few on YouTube. Just saying. But anyway, I did want to mention that, just kind of tongue-in-cheek. I've been having fun with the internet libertarians. Look, there's an element of truth in what Trump is saying as far as the happiness thing, which is that dialectical materialist philosophy, which is, Marx developed his worldview in the context of the revolution against feudalism, and there was a belief that there is no spirituality. There was a belief that change only comes through conflict, and because of that, there is a certain kind of negative resentment, hostility mindset that one associates with Marxism. If you look at the communist governments of the world, they've moved away from that. They've kind of changed their focus. And that's been a big theme that I have gotten at on these streams, is the need to separate the spiritual aspect of Marxism, which is very much the prevailing ideology of the West. It's the wokeism, it's the resentment, it's the destructive impulse, versus the economics of Marxism, which is very, very important. The problem of overproduction and value crisis, the tendency of the falling rate of profit, the need for the centralization of the means of production, the getting rid of the anarchy of production, the chaos of the market, and replacing it with production upon a predetermined plan. I've been debating these libertarians online. That's one thing we can thank Elon Musk for, is, I guess, ever since Trump got on his anti-communism kick, Elon Musk has turned Twitter into a never-ending debate about capitalism versus socialism. Now, I have been on there putting forward our unique, optimistic, constructive, innovationist approach toward, socialism, right? We have transcended the Marxist-Leninist stage, and that we have a new ideological approach we call innovationism that celebrates human creativity, and you'll hear more about that. Everyone who attended the convention got one of these little booklets, which is called Innovationism, a book of quotations that kind of tells people all about this new perspective that we have developed. We're doing a lot to try and pioneer new ground and make sure that we have an optimistic movement that is focused on building and constructing and unleashing human creativity. But that said, one thing that I'm doing, I guess I'll just throw this out there, is that I gave a presentation on this channel a couple weeks back before the convention. I gave a presentation called "How Could a Revolution Actually Happen in America?" Right? And it was widely viewed. But I also realized that it would be stronger if I had, the quotations from Marx, the quotations to back up what I was saying, the data, right? I wrote kind of a slideshow just kind of laying out our perspective for building an anti-monopoly coalition and, all of that. So I've decided next week, and I'm almost done with it, it'll be a short pamphlet-sized book that we're going to be putting out. It'll be coming out next week. The book version of that presentation, right? So this will be available next week. I'm almost done with it as I'm editing video. That's going to be our new CPI book. How could a revolution actually happen in America? And that is going to be available online. And I'm quite excited to have that out because I feel like it's a question that gets people talking. It's going to be a very short book, probably less than 100 pages, probably the size of the Houthi book. But this book is going to be available because I think it speaks to a question that a lot of young people and a lot of people that are getting into this really have. How is it that we could possibly get an America that's not part of globalism, imperialism? What actually would it take? What would a revolution in America even look like? And why is it the communist groups that are out there don't seem to get it, right? And I mean, what would it be like? So this book is going to be coming out next week. And I'm having a good time putting it together, editing different stuff. So be sure to get your copy of it when this book comes out next week. We are go here at the Center for Political Innovation. We don't take we don't take a breather. We just keep going. And our team did an amazing job at the convention. So many great things are happening. So I do have a few questions to answer in the second half of our show. And John just sent another question for me to answer, which I appreciate. I'm just looking at it. I haven't looked at it yet. Oh, right. John, I pulled that video. So why don't I just do that real quick? We talked about Jill Stein earlier, about Jill Stein is facing her arrest. And I actually pulled the video while I was showing the other thing. So I talked about Jill Stein earlier and her facing arrest. This is the confrontation that I guess the criminal charges stem from. And I guess John sent the link, but I had already pulled it. I was going to show it anyway. This is what they're charging Jill Stein for. The charges that alleging that she kicked a cop in the groin and all this it's because of this standoff that happened at a university in Missouri. So we'll just show that clip.
Hold the line now, hold the line! Hold it down! Hold the line now, hold the line! Hold it down, hold the line! Hold the line now, hold the line! Get back! Hey, you get back! You get back! That's his foot! That's his foot! That's his foot! You get back!
Yeah, I don't see a police officer being assaulted there. You know, I mean, if you look at this, this is what they're claiming was her kicking a cop in the groin. You know, she's holding onto a bicycle with both of her hands, and and she's tripping. They're claiming that she kicked a cop in the groin. I'm not seeing that. I don't see that. Yeah, this is what she's facing charges for, right? As the police are basically just terrorizing this crowd of pro-Palestine protesters. You know, I look at this. I'm not seeing an assault on a police officer, but this is what they're trying to charge Jill Stein for and put her in jail for. So we've got to rally to Jill Stein's defense, right? We know the Democrat Party would like to lock up Jill Stein just to keep her off the ballot, right? That's why they would like to lock her up. Also because she's made anti-war statements. Also because of the fact she stood up for Uhuru and has challenged the FBI. So, you know, we've got to rally to Jill Stein's defense. We need to support Jill Stein. There's no question about it. And we need to speak up and support her against this frame up from, you know, she has the right to protest for Palestine. And, you know, I did not see any violence there. I saw her with a group of students, you know, kind of holding the line. There was a conflict over a bicycle. We got to support Jill Stein. We've got to support Jill Stein in the face of this frame up, in the face of this attack. So, yeah, thank you, John, for sharing that video with us. You know, we do appreciate that. So I want to remind people that if you do have something for me to talk about in the second half of our show, go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Send your question. That's the best way to send it. And we've got a lot to go through tonight. You know, why don't you see him say ouch and grab his balls? That's one way to put it. You know, you want to be crude. Yeah, I didn't see that. So, but anyhow, so go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin if you got any questions for the second half of our show. And now I'm going to show the rally that we did on Friday morning, August 14th, the rally that's already been seen all over the world, our rally against the Obama Library, honoring the great African leader Muammar Gaddafi. And after that, we'll do the roll call, and I'll answer people's questions. So send me any questions that you got. We're going to put on this rally. I mean, this was a beautiful, beautiful rally. It was so amazing what we did. I am just so proud of our organization that we did this. And it's about a 20-minute video of our going to the Obama Presidential Center and talking about the great African leader who Obama killed and why it's so important and why Obama's legacy shouldn't be remembered as a great one. He should be remembered as the dirty, rotten imperialist murderer and woke grifter that he is, and standing up for anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. This was the Center for Political Innovation at the Obama Library. And then I'll answer questions. So here we go.
Long live Gaddafi! 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 Obama killed Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi!
Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi!
Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi!
Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi!
And we just got to do our thing and get the hell out of here because,
we'd like to not get arrested.
we're already seeing like there's some private security people that are just mulling around over there. So as soon as we start, they will call the cops. That's how these things go. What we're doing is perfectly legal. This is public speech on a public sidewalk. But, some people don't agree, obviously. Obama's got some groupies.
There is an ugly building, isn't it, John?
Yes.
Why would they do it that way? Yeah.
I mean,
Destroy hope.
Yeah.
certainly not.
That's remind you of the anti-hope. People need to stop worshiping war criminals like Obama.
Yeah.
It has to end now. Now, an open-air chattel market state. Does that sound like a hero to you?
No.
Not only has he displaced people in Libya doing that, he's displaced the residents here in this community in Chicago just to build this atrocity. Is that a hero? No.
Obama is responsible for the crisis of terrorism in the Sahel. He bombed the hell out of Libya and turned it into a slave market. And the Tuareg rebels that were in Gaddafi's military, NATO has armed them to be terrorists in West Africa. And the Alliance of Sahel States has said, we are building our own army. We are fighting terrorism, which is a product of imperialism.
Murder of Ayatollah Khomeini is the worst foreign policy mistake since the murder of Muammar Gaddafi.
That's right.
They are the same. Trump and Obama, both the same. Killing heroes is their game.
That's right.
You to think that Donald Trump and Barack Obama are opposites. In reality, they are twins. Both Donald Trump and Barack Obama ran as peace candidates, and both of them governed as war criminals.
That's right.
All we heard in the mainstream media for so many years was just positive things about Barack Obama. Because he was an example to the young people of this country. He wasn't what you usually would predict to see in the White House, right?
We are out here in front of the Obama Library today to let everyone know that Obamacare, which is supposed to save the United States healthcare system, is a farce.
Yeah.
It cost $850 million to build this atrocity behind us. It cost, who knows how many billions of dollars for a farce of a healthcare system. It cost how many trillions of dollars to give the Zionists in Israel free healthcare when we cannot even afford to go in to a public hospital without going into debt. We cannot even afford to be able to put food on our table because of the rising prices. Let me tell you a little bit about the country of Libya under this amazing hero, Muammar Gaddafi, a true icon of the anti-imperialist movement. Under Gaddafi, he had a program where any African from anywhere on the continent could come there and become employed. He had a universal income for any citizen. He had universal housing. Meanwhile, Obama murdered him and bulldozed the homes of poor people so that he could put up this icon to his ego, and it's absolutely disgusting. They killed millions of people. Millions of people drowned trying to escape Libya on what was once the most prosperous country on the African continent. And why? Why? Because Gaddafi wanted to set up an alternative African bank so the people of Africa would not have to live in poverty because of the imperialists in Europe and the United States who were doing their best to keep them poor. And Obama, on behalf of the bankers, on behalf of the Zionists, on behalf of the imperialist establishment, murdered the leader of the most prosperous country on the African continent.
Did the right thing, going to Laos and apologizing to those people about all the atrocities of what we committed there in the 1960s. But I can point at this picture here because from personal experience, I had a roommate in Japan who was from Libya when I was living there and teaching English. And he told me at the end of the Reagan era, this was at the end of the Reagan era when Gaddafi was a young man, that he was there in Japan because he finished in the top 20% or whatever it was of his class. And he wanted to study this certain kind of engineering, right? Which probably led to the Underground River Project kind of engineering. And he was there because the school that he wanted to go to was in Tokyo, and Gaddafi's government paid all of his expenses so he could be there and go to that school. And I realized later when I saw things unfolding, it was probably the Underground River Project that he worked on. That brought a lot of economic development in that area. People were coming from all around the continent of Africa to get jobs there, to learn how to do that in their own country, in the desert, to grow food. Amazing achievement. I also knew that you got free health care. I mean, how can you be a bad person if you're actually helping your people? Whereas Barack Obama, he's got a legacy of droning people in Syria, killing people in Libya, causing the crisis in Libya. And did we get single-payer health care for our own people? No!
No! So what we have here, this is Gaddafi's book that he published in 1978. And it was called The Green Book, and it stated the ideology on which he built Libya up to be the most prosperous country in Africa. And this was the first book we ever published as the Center for Political Innovation. And I want to read to you, this is what Gaddafi, the great African leader who was murdered by Barack Hussein Obama, this is what he wrote. An income is an imperative need for a man. And in a socialist society, it should not be in the form of wages from any source of charity or anyone. In this society, there are no wage earners, but only partners. And here's what he said about housing. Housing is an essential need for both the individual and the family, and should not be owned by others. Living in another's house, whether paying rent or not, compromises freedom. Target the ultimate solution, the necessity of people owning their own dwellings. They used to tell us that was the American dream, owning your own home. But in Libya, Gaddafi made it reality. The people did own their own homes. All across America, American families that once had that American dream, owning your own home is history. But Gaddafi made it reality for people in a historically impoverished country, along with building the great man-made river, along with providing the highest life expectancy on the African continent.
Gaddafi is a hero.
Yes.
Because he provided for his people. He gave them free housing. He gave them free health care. He gave them free education. He also gave any African citizen the ability to have a job if they wanted to. If they wanted to come to Libya, he promised them free education and free employment. He also provided the world's greatest irrigation system.
Gaddafi was a socialist, but he was a populist. He built a populist movement. He said the oil of Libya should be the property of all the people, and he nationalized the oil, and he used the oil to build Libya up. And right now, I would say just like Libya was a colony of Wall Street and London and the international bankers prior to the 1969 revolution, I would say that America is a colony of the international bankers and Wall Street and London and the Zionists and the Israel lobby. We have been colonized by the same people, and we need to do what the Libyans did in 1969 and retake our country and have a government that builds up America instead of bombing people all over the world. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. That's what we need in this country. Gaddafi, that was a government of action in Libya that doubled the life expectancy, that lifted people up, and that's what we need right here in America. And that's why the first book we published as the Center for Political Innovation was the Green Book, and we have sold 4,000 copies of it. This is the top-selling edition of it on Amazon because we wrote an introduction telling the truth about Libya, telling how Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch lied and admitted they lied to create that war, and how Gaddafi, in terms of real economic growth, improved people's lives heads and shoulders above everything. We're going to end this rally with a moment of silence, and then we're going to form up. We're going to march 2 by 2 behind this banner, and we're going to march down that street, and we're going to chant, "Long live Gaddafi," in solidarity with this great African leader, this great anti-colonial fighter who was ruthlessly murdered by the human rights regime change industry, the people who hijack left aesthetics, who preach socialism but practice fascism to serve this imperialist system, the social democrats, if you want to call that, right? The people who betrayed the most prosperous country in Africa, who gave up their internationalism for an opportunity to get a shot on TV. We're going to stand and remember this great African leader and use his great example.
Green books in your right hand. Green books in your right hand. Take your green books in your right hand. Face forward. Green books in your right hand. Green books in your right hand. Right hand, hold up your green books. Face forward. Face forward. All right. We're not going to react to anybody. We're going to keep our eyes forward. And I'm going to go across the street. We're going to wait for the light. And then when the light changes, we're going to march and face forward past that visitor center as loud as we possibly can. Long live Gaddafi. Long live Gaddafi. Until we get to the end of the block, and then we're going to disperse. Are we all on the same page?
Long live Gaddafi! 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 Obama killed Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Long live Gaddafi! Hands off Africa! Hands off Africa! Hands off Leone! Hands off Africa! Hands up! Killing heroes is long live Gaddafi! Obama killed 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 Gaddafi! Long live 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 Gaddafi! Hands off Africa! Hands off priority! Hands off Africa! Hands off priority! Hands off Africa! Hands off priority! Hands off Africa! Obama killed Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Obama killed Gaddafi! Hands off Africa! Hands off priority! Hands off Africa! Hands off priority!
So do we want to be destroyers of the world, the destroyers of America?
No.
Pounding people into poverty? Or do we want to be builders? That's going to be the choice.
Yeah.
You got to make. You want to be a builder or do you want to be a destroyer?
That's
so
right.
come with us, CPI, and build and get your message out there because we're doing it and nobody else is doing it.
That's right.
That's a Borg cube there. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Yeah, he's training young activists there, I guess, right? So I guess that fits, right? They've turned it into like a George Soros training school or something.
But how are they training them? That's the question.
Yeah.
So that isn't Art Deco.
Definitely not. That's definitely not Art Deco. They're training them by implanting them.
It's really important that we're here today because our organization, the Center for Political Innovation, we really came into existence because of what happened in Libya. I was an activist. I used to work for Ramsey Clark, who was the Attorney General under Lyndon Johnson, and I was an activist with Occupy Wall Street, and at the same time we were marching against Wall Street. The United States was bombing Libya, along with the NATO coalition. And I went to that park and I argued with people. And I said, we need to bring the war against Wall Street here at home in coordination with the war to defend Libya from U.S. imperialism. That was my message. But there were a lot of people at Occupy Wall Street that were being paid by George Soros and being paid by the Ford Foundation, and they had it the other way around. And they said, our revolution in Occupy Wall Street is coordinated. It's the same as the revolution against Gaddafi. And I didn't see it that way. And I noticed that a lot of the professional leftists, that you could say, I used to call them beautiful occupiers, the very well-paid people who stayed at luxury hotels and got all the MSNBC interviews, they all loved and cheered the death of Gaddafi. But it was young people like me who came to New York City on Greyhound buses, a lot of whom were into Alex Jones or into what you might call conspiracy theories or libertarian stuff. A lot of them understood that Gaddafi was building an independent African bank and understood that Gaddafi was fighting the same system that we were fighting at Occupy Wall Street. They understood that. And I was outraged because the anti-war organization I was working with at that time did almost nothing to support Libya. And I read this book, the Green Book, and I went to the leaders of the anti-imperialist group I was working with, and I said, I read this book, Gaddafi is a socialist, and he's building a socialist society in Libya. And they said, oh, no, Gaddafi is a bourgeois nationalist. He's a bourgeois nationalist. And I said to them, well, that's funny because the banks and the factories and the industries in Libya are all run by the people. They have popular committees where people exercise their democratic rights and participate in government. And they said, well, it's not a socialist society because Gaddafi believes in God. He believes in God. He's not a true Marxist-Leninist. He's an Islamic socialist. He doesn't have the ideology that we hold on to from the 20th century. And that's absolutely outrageous. And I will say, the communist groups in America, including the one I was in, did more to try and convince me that Libya wasn't a socialist society than they did to stand with Libya during the war. And that is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous, right? We should have been occupying buildings to stand with Libya. We should have been protesting to stand with Libya. We should have been organizing. But because the president was Barack Obama, and because it wasn't trendy and hip and cool on Facebook to go out and protest and stand with this African country, people weren't doing it. And that was the beginning of me realizing we needed to have a new type of organization. An organization that could bring in those kids from the Midwest like me, who came on a Greyhound bus and identified with Gaddafi, even if they didn't have the ideology the right way. And that's what made me think we need a new type of organization. Because if Gaddafi, who supported the Black Panthers, who supported the Irish freedom struggle, who supported Nelson Mandela, who supported the Nation of Islam, who supported so many people all over this world fighting for freedom, if the left, if the socialists couldn't stand with him, they can't stand with anybody. They're worthless. That's what they are. And we need to build a movement that can reach out to ordinary Americans and speak to their economic rights. And I must say there's another organization that had the courage to call out Barack Obama during this war, and that was the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party. And just like the so-called left didn't stand with Libya, when Joe Biden sent the FBI to raid their homes and drag them into federal court, the left left them out to dry as well. But we stood with them, and we were with them in federal court. And Chairman O'Malley, the leader of the African People's Socialist Party, is a great admirer of Gaddafi. And one of the first issues that I ever read of his newspaper, The Burning Spear, contained Gaddafi's last testament, a beautiful letter written by Gaddafi prior to his death, explaining what the war was really about. But Gaddafi can do what he did in an impoverished African country. Imagine what we could do here if we had a real government. Think about it. If he could transform this country, this impoverished country in North Africa, in just one generation by taking control of their oil. If we took control of America's oil and America's coal and America's timber, if we had a national bank that injected credit into communities, if we enacted an economic bill of rights like Roosevelt talked about, America could be a high-tech utopia. The wealth is there. But the problem is the wealth is in the hands of Wall Street and London. And we need to build a mass movement demanding a government that takes it from them and organizes the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few. So dare to struggle, dare to win, dare to struggle, dare to win, dare to struggle, dare to win, dare to struggle, dare to win.
Yep, that's us. We are the Center for Political Innovation. And as depressing as the news might be, we are the movement that is emerging. We are the response right? They think they can just get away with what they're doing, but the working people are going to organize and they are going to resist. So I do want to say once more, if you have a question for the second half of the show, go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. That's the best way to do it. You can also do Rumble rants, Cash App, Super Chats work. We're monetized. But yeah, Mike in Miami was great. He was there. This is wild. So anyway, names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us tonight? We're going to do our roll call, names and locations. I'll call you all out as I see you. Then I will answer the questions that have come in. And there's been a substantial amount of questions that have come in over our break. So names and locations, names and locations. Kew Gardens, New York, Checkpoint Charlie. Bendigo, Australia, David Fox. Marsh Lock, Canada. Good to see you. Marsh Lock, Canada. Rory in St. Louis, Missouri. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. JT24 in Mississippi. Cecily in Joliet. Good to see you, Cecily. Names and locations. We got the Ozarks. The Ozarks Mountains. I had family from there. Names and locations. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Oops, California. Oops, California. Right, was that a song? Oops, California. John is in Chicago. He was in the video. You just saw him. He was doing great. Good stuff. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Anybody else? Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. We always like to do a roll call. Just Arlene in Milwaukee. Good to see you, Arlene. Good to see you. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. D in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Good to see you, D. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. We are the Center for Political Innovation. Keep your eye out. Next week, there's going to be a lot of video. Irene in Brooklyn. Good to see you. There's going to be a lot of video next week. Alex in Brazil. Going to be a lot of video coming out next week. I have a lot of video to edit. Great speeches, great activities. You just got a little bit of a preview there. I think the Terrori video will probably go up next because I don't have that much editing left to do. But the Terrori video will go up next, I think. And then, the speeches and all kinds of stuff. We had a great event. I'm looking to do kind of a reality TV kind of version of the event. I did a lot of filming. We had a great talent show. We just had a lot of fun. And, I'm going to do kind of a reality TV version of it. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Please join. We are looking to increase the membership around the country. Gabby in Chicago. Gabby was great. You saw her in the video. She was in the Terrori video earlier. She was killing it. Gabby was great. We're doing great stuff, folks. We are doing great stuff. So, all right. So now I'm going to answer the questions that have come in via Buy Me a Coffee. And there has been 7. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 really, but one of them was John asking about Jill Stein. So there's been 7. I guess it's more than that. Well, anyway, we'll start with New Jersey Dan. What can you tell us about Henry Clay and the American system? Thank you. Well, the American system was a response to Adam Smith and the British Empire economics. As Britain was emerging and becoming an imperialist power, they justified what they did in the name of economic theories that were pioneered by Adam Smith. Adam Smith is considered the first modern economist. Before him, you had David Ricardo. Before him, you had Malthus, Robert Malthus. But really, Adam Smith is kind of the father of classical economics. He was a Scotsman who lived in Glasgow, and he wrote The Wealth of Nations, and he kind of wrote, the modern economic theories. And he was an advocate of free trade and the notion that the free market always gets the best results. and kind of survival of the fittest, if you will. Eventually, Charles Darwin's economic theories were used to justify free market and free trade policies. But the British Empire economic model, in which the idea is that you just have free competition, the government stays out of the economy, that was really pioneered by Adam Smith. There were many people around the world who rejected it. One of the main voices rejecting it at the time in the 1800s was a Roman Catholic German economist named Friedrich List. Friedrich List, who opposed it in the name of the nation state and the idea that you want a strong nation and you want a government that balances a harmony of interests. That's kind of the beginning of that. It actually started in Germany with the economic theories of Friedrich List, who was kind of this German nationalist economist that argued that you need a state to kind of regulate the economy. Then, in America, you had Alexander Hamilton and his belief that the government should build lighthouses. Alexander Hamilton was a big advocate of taxing and not levying federal taxes, but rather tariffs, and using federal government money with a national bank to build lighthouses across the coasts of America. Later, you had Henry Clay, and you had Henry Charles Carey, who is an economist that I actually really appreciate. And I quote Henry Charles Carey, the economic advisor to Abraham Lincoln, in a lot of my writings. Henry Charles Carey wrote a book called The Harmony of Interests. And in that book, he argued that there was the English system, which was free trade, impoverishing the world, concentrating the wealth in mighty cities, versus what he called the American system, which was the notion of having a national bank and investing in the population, investing in the farmers so they could make wealth come up from the soil. I think that American economics has a lot to it. It's one side of the puzzle. It's one aspect of it. Let me just put it this way. I've started to realize that sometimes there can be different ideas that have different aspects of the truth that are really pointing to the same truth. There's a story I heard a long time ago about an elephant. And the idea is that there was an elephant, and they assembled a group of blind men, and they let them feel with their hands the elephant. And some blind men said that the elephant was a snake. Some blind men said the elephant was hard and flat. And some of the blind men said that the elephant was like a tree stump. It was round. And there were different ideas of what the elephant looked like. And they were all true. Part of the elephant was like a snake. Part of the elephant was flat. Part of the elephant, was round like a tree trunk. They were all just touching different parts of the elephant, and they were describing the same thing. None of them were wrong. It's just they perceived different parts of the elephant, and they didn't have the whole picture. They couldn't see the whole elephant. That's what I would argue that American system economics is. There's understanding one big part of imperialism. What Lenin wrote about in his book, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, what Alexander Dugin and the geopolitical school of economics and geopolitics, what they point to when they talk about Atlanticism, and what Henry Charles Carey talked about when he talked about the English system versus the American system. They're all pointing to the same thing. They're pointing to the fact that there is an economic system centered around houses of finance that concentrates wealth in mighty cities, that has militarism and control of trade routes in the name of free trade, globalization in the name of free trade, very much enforced with militarism and military entities, that concentrates wealth in mighty cities and impoverishes nations, and that has a view that development is bad. Right? I think Henry Charles Carey talked about underworking the Hindu and sinking the rest of the world down to his level. Vladimir Lenin talked about, extraction and the rise of an international financial oligarchy. They're pointing to an understanding of the same thing. Rosa Luxemburg had her understanding of capital accumulation and her theory. Chairman O'Malley talks about the colonial mode of production. They were all pointing towards the same thing, which is the economic system that exists in the West. And that economic system that is centered around Wall Street and London is impoverishing the world and is even impoverishing the imperialist homelands. And that the reduction of human beings to financial calculations, the belief that human beings are the problem and not the solution, the lack of understanding that wealth is created by human beings and their creativity and their labor power, that is the basis for an economic model that is outmoded, and that the Western economic system is destroying the world, and that around the world there are various countries that have broken out of that system. And China's revolution, the Russian Revolution, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, all of these countries have broken out of this Western imperialist economic system, which is, you can describe it in different ways. They've broken out of it. And they have governments that are pro-growth and want to raise their people up and invest in their people as a source of wealth. And the economic model, the economic theories of Adam Smith, the economic theories of Robert Malthus, they view human beings as the problem. They view overpopulation as the greatest threat. And they view holding back development as kind of a necessity and concentrating wealth in mighty cities. They believe in building up a giant military to extract tribute from around the world. It's the Roman Empire model of a civilization applied in modern times. And it is a model for holding back growth and development. And it's an anti-human worldview. It views human beings as the problem and not the solution. And around the world, people have broken out of it. And the 20th century, people breaking out of Atlanticism or globalism, imperialism, or the English system, whatever you want to call it, took the form of Marxist-Leninist governments, but not always. And nowadays, things have changed a lot. And if you look at what they're doing in China, if you look at what they're doing in Iran, you look at what they're doing in the Union of Sahel States, it doesn't all match up ideologically. Plus, there is a form of leftism that opposes what's happening in China, opposes what's happening in Cuba and Venezuela, and instead focuses on spreading instability and chaos, and that's promoted by the globalist imperialists. So it's all very confusing. And that's what makes the Center for Political Innovation unique. If you read Innovationism, our book here, we have a whole chapter describing what we're against, right? The first chapter is called The United States of America, and we talk about America and what this is all about. It's a series of quotations. We also have a chapter called Globalism, Imperialism, Chapter 2, and we describe this economic system. And we draw from Henry Charles Carey, and we draw from Vladimir Lenin, and we draw from Alexander Dugin, and we kind of give our understanding of this economic system. So I think highly of American economics. I think it's a very, very important piece of the understanding of what this system that is destroying the world is, and what we're up against. So I hope that answers your question, New Jersey Dan. Next question. All right, that was the first question that came in. We're answering all the questions that came in via Buy Me a Coffee while we took our little break. So if you have another question to send in, feel free, buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin, or you can, you're always welcome to, send a super chat or send the question another way. But anyway, we're going to get to the next question, which came in. We just did New Jersey Dan. So someone, that's the anonymous, asked, you wear a lot of what looks like indigenous tops. Please tell us about these clothes, right? Well, that's my style. I like shirts without collars on them. Right now, my shirt has a collar on it, but I like the Mandarin collar style. I've been dressing that way for a long time. I had one shirt like that when I was in high school. I really liked it, a white shirt. And then, I started wearing them, especially when I was working with Press TV from Iran. That's kind of the Iranian look. And so my wife, her sister is from Guatemala, and she found out that I like to wear these shirts. And so every time she visits me, my wife's sister will bring me shirts from Guatemala. And the shirts that I'm wearing largely without collars on them are largely Guatemalan shirts, that come from there. I know one time I wore a shirt like that for an interview, and some people thought it was from Africa. It's not from Africa. Some people thought it was from Ukraine. Definitely not from Ukraine. These are shirts from Guatemala. And that's my style. And when I'm not wearing a suit and tie as a reporter, I like to wear the shirts without collars on them. I find them to be a good look. Right now, all of those shirts are dirty because I wore them in Chicago. So I'm going to be washing them soon, and hopefully I'll be wearing my collarless Guatemalan shirts on here again soon. But until then, I'm probably going to be wearing shirts with a collar. I do have a couple other shirts that don't have collars that are not from Guatemala, a couple other Mandarin collar shirts. So maybe I'll throw some of those on. But at the moment, yeah, all of my nice Guatemalan shirts are dirty from, if you're going around doing things, they get a little bit dirty. But luckily, the washing machine has been invented, and soon they will not be dirty. So we just gotta wait for a little bit. But yeah, I do like to wear those style of shirts. It's just kind of my style. That's how I like to dress. So thank you for asking that very, very good question, someone. All right. Someone got his question in. Now, Gavin from CPI, he said, books that humanize Mao. That was his question. Hold on, right? Yeah, books that humanize Mao is what he asked. Yeah, I would recommend, if you're looking for a book that humanizes Mao, the best biography of Mao Zedong that I have ever read is this one, which is called Wind in the Tower. It's written by Han Suyin. Han Suyin was an American novelist. She wrote Love is a Many Splendored Thing, and that was a hit novel, and so she had quite a bit of credibility as a novelist. And so then, after she wrote Love is a Many Splendored Thing, the Chinese Revolution happened. She became, a sympathizer. That was an old question. Sorry, Gavin. But anyway, sorry, that was an old question. Must be a mistake on, I'm just looking over the different questions people have sent in. Okay. So Sam said, can you kindly make a video explaining what is communism, similar to your recent video about what is fascism? I find these videos very extremely informative. I don't have any premonitions on this topic, but I'm also not convinced Marx was a good guy or had good intentions. Can you explain the ideology? Can you kindly explain how overproduction is an issue when generally the wealth of a nation is measured in good services available to people? Is it the monopolies drive the price so low that it makes the market unprofitable and ruining the economy? How can the economy be arranged when people benefit more directly? I recall you mentioning mathematically there is not enough wages paid out to buy all the goods produced in an economy to optimize production. How should the economy be designed? Consumer-based, crony, monopolistic stakeholder capitalism is problematic, but in worker ownership, having the baristas run Starbucks, the factory owners have all the say in the factory will surely be a disaster. Very good point. Most decisions are made because of a more grand perspective that might not make immediate sense on the ground level. However, when the organization is too big, the leadership loses touch. There's a story that when the Soviet Union government was tasked with making shoes, militarists and planners planned out an entire distribution of these shoes. Soon after, shortages of the most popular sizes. No government shoes were stylish. While the leadership focused on production, the Soviet Union, despite being the number one producers of shoes in the world, had shortages and issues. Is this a flaw in communism, or further evidence of overproduction being an issue? The Buy Me a Coffee commenter one comment helped me raise some good points as well. Is communism is simply a description of central planning and nationalization of industry to return the profits to the people of selected stakeholders? Is the Chinese capitalist communist hybrid the best answer? Can you clear up my misconceptions? All right. It's a big question, and there are quite a few videos on this channel that address that question. For instance, in a second, I'm going to show you the socialist math video that explains the problem of overproduction. But basically, the way I understand it, right? And again, there are different interpretations. We call our understanding innovationism, because if you start calling yourself a socialist or a communist in America, people immediately think, well, that you want to tax people, impose taxes on people to make everyone equal in terms of income. That's not what we want to do. That's not what we want to do. And then there's also this worker cooperative thing flowing around. Well, I'm not against worker cooperatives, having the workers get a share of the profits of the corporation that they make. It's not a bad thing, but that's not the essence of what we're getting at. Capitalism, as we understand it, is profits in command. Friedrich Engels said, under capitalism, the means of production simply function as preliminary transformation into capital. Mao Zedong said profits are in command. And Karl Marx talked about the anarchy of production. The anarchy of production. When profits are in command, corporations are trying to maximize profits. You have an economy where the major means of production only function in order to get a return on the investment for the owners. They only function as preliminary transformation into capital. That's the problem. And the solution is to have society as a whole, not individual workplaces. That might be a good thing to have workers have input, but that's not the essence of it. But society as a whole centralize the means of production and have production upon a predetermined plan. Have the centralization of the means of production. Now, what we have learned, that shoes issue that you pointed to, that's a great example of why when it comes to consumer goods, things that make life fun, like clothing, like children's toys, like restaurants, like hotels, things like that, yes, people should vote with their dollars. And you need people operating those companies who do want to give the customer the best experience possible. However, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to electrification, when it comes to major industries like steel manufacturing or the manufacturing of plastics, when it comes to managing the oil wells or nuclear power plants, things like that, should be under public ownership and centrally planned, and the credit, the purse strings, should be assigned strategically in the interest. And what you described in China as a capitalist-communist hybrid, they don't see it that way. They call it socialism with Chinese characteristics. And if you look at Venezuela, if you look at Nicaragua, which is very successful, it's the same system, right? Where the state controls the banking system and plans out and assigns credit strategically in the interest of the country overall, where the state controls the natural resources and the electrification and the utilities, where the state provides health care, and the state then subsidizes businesses and cooperatives, people to make toys and clothing, helps people start their own farms. If you look at what Ibrahim Traore is doing, if you look at China's economic model, if you look at what Russia has, right, where the state controls Gazprom, a giant natural gas company that's run by the state, Rosneft, a giant oil company that's run by the state and then subsidizes the mining and the manufacturing, and you have economic central planning, utilizing the market and people's entrepreneurial initiative, but having an overall central plan and having the state plan out the economy and not having profits in command. That's what I understand socialism to be. I don't see China as a capitalist-communist hybrid. I see it as a society that no longer has profits in command, where society is controlling the means of production and then utilizing market mechanisms and entrepreneurialism as part of their overall state central plan. And that's what I'm for. And we call it innovationism. The Soviet model is not coming back. The Soviet Union had tremendous successes. They built the world's largest power plants. They wiped out illiteracy. They built the world's largest steel mills. They invented space travel. Do not let anyone ever tell you the Soviet Union failed. However, after they got over that first hurdle of industrialization, there were things they needed to improve on when it came to things like you pointed to as consumer goods. They needed to become more like China. And unfortunately, their political system had developed to become very rigid. And so when they tried to implement market reforms, it led to the whole system coming apart. However, China was able to adjust their system and continue to build on the basis of, they had built up the industries with Soviet aid, and then they were able to continue growing. I view that model of the state controlling and planning out the economy on behalf of the population, but utilizing the market as part of it, subsidizing people to start their own businesses, subsidizing cooperative enterprises. I view that as the system that I'm for. I used to call that socialism with American characteristics or socialism of the 21st century. I don't use the word socialism anymore. I try not to. I mean, I kind of do, but I'm so at odds with what all the people calling themselves socialists and communists believe. I'm so at odds with them that it doesn't make sense for me to use that thing. So we talk about innovationism because we're for growth. Growth is not bad, right? It is capitalism that is preventing economic growth because of the irrationality of the market and the tendency of the falling rate of profit and the problem of overproduction. And we need a popular state, a government of action that will fight for working families and break the power of the big monopolies so that we can unleash human creativity and brilliance to rise to an even higher plane. So there's two videos I'm going to show you. One, I think I've got here, which is the 5-year plan song. Right? This is a video, kind of a cartoon for kids, that the Chinese government made to explain what their 5-year economic plans are. And I think I've got it on here. Yeah, we've got it. This is what I'm for, right? Obviously, we would do it differently, but we want to make 5-year economic plans. We want the state to be responsible for overseeing economic growth. So I'm going to put on this 5-year plan song from China. Then after that, I'll show you the problem of overproduction in the socialist math video, and then we'll move on to the next question. Here we go.
Hey, have you guys heard what's going on in China?
President Xi Jinping's new style?
Yes, and there's more.
The Shisanu. The what?
China's 13th 5-year plan. Yeah, the Shisanu.
Oh.
Every 5 years in China, man, they make a new development plan. The time has come for number 13. Shisanu, that's what it means.
It's a huge deal. Like how huge?
Huge.
Like China huge?
Yeah, China huge.
Oh, that's really big.
If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu, the Shisanu.
The Shisanu what?
The Shisanu.
But who makes all the plans?
There's government ministers and think tank minds and party leadership contributing fines. There's doctors, bankers, and farmers too, and even engineers who deal with poo.
Ew, did I hear that right?
Yeah, it's true. Chorus.
If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu, the Shisanu.
The Shisanu what?
The Shisanu.
But how do they make all the plans?
First there's research, views collected, then discussion and views projected. Reports get written and passed around. Then there's actually more research and more discussion and more research and more discussion. Like at every level. Over and over, like through hundreds of rounds. It's
Okay, we got it. Hundreds of rounds. Oh my god.
crazy, right? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu, the Shisanu.
The Shisan what?
The Shisanu.
But it's not over yet.
When the plan comes out, the work's not done. In fact, it's really just begun. Because every province, county, city, too, have got to figure out what they're gonna do.
Whoa.
That's a lot to do.
I know.
Hey, what's it called again?
The Shisanu. If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu, the Shisanu.
The Shisan what?
The Shisanu.
Then the plans keep getting even better.
As the plan goes down from high to low, the government's experience continues to grow. They have to work hard and deliberate, because a billion lives are all at stake.
Like every 赵钱孙李周吴郑王冯钱楚魏蒋沈
Chorus! If you wanna know what China's gonna do, let's pay attention to the Shisanu. The Shisanu, the Shisanu. Everybody's talking about the Shisanu.
So that's it.
That's it?
Yeah, now it's time to get ready for the 14th 5-year plan.
What?
Yeah, the Shisu.
The Shisu what?
Yeah, that song's pretty old at this point. They're already on the 14th 5-year plan, but I am never going to stop liking that song because that's what I'm for. That's what I'm for. I'm for a government that has the responsibility to oversee economic growth, that controls the major means of production, and has a plan to carry out economic growth. And the problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profits is explained in this video. By the way, if you want to retweet, I just tweeted out this video with a short explanation. I think it's pretty relevant in some of the debates that are happening on X. So if you want to retweet that song, go ahead. And then this is the socialist math video where I explain the problem of overproduction. But yeah, these are good questions. So thanks for sending them. But yeah, this is our video on the problem of overproduction. So here we go.
Explain what needs to be explained, what used to be considered Marxism 101, about why it is that our Western capitalist economy is crashing and burning. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do some math. And I hate math. Do you know why I hate math? Because I grew up in America. I went to public school in the United States of America, so I am going to, at risk of embarrassing myself, because math was never my best subject, I am going to do some mathematics here on the board for you to explain the problem.
I very much enjoyed Caleb's speech.
So if you are creating a product, right? If you're a factory owner, you're making a product, you are going to need the material through which that product is made, the manufacturing materials. So that'll be A.
The simple equation you put forward to explain the crisis of overproduction and the falling rate of profit.
And you're probably going to need to transport the product to where it's sold. That's B.
It broke down where your money goes.
You're also going to have to pay your labor costs. Labor costs are represented by C.
Explanations of those concepts that people are able to understand.
Then when consumers purchase the product, they're going to pay a final price. And that final price is D. However, there's a problem with that.
I like the fact that he framed it that way to make it very clear.
Which is that the capitalist can't change how much A costs. He can't change how much B costs. So the profit of the capitalist can only be extracted from the value put into it by the worker. And this is the basis of Marxism, the understanding of surplus value.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere. I've never been able to explain it that simply.
So C, the labor value, is divided. You have C1, which is what the worker actually gets paid, and then you have C2, which is the profit that the capitalist makes. And it all adds up to D, which is the final cost of the product. Now, the way people in the United States who talk about Marxism generally talk about this is they say, well, this is unfair. They say the worker is not getting paid the full value of his labor. But they're missing one of the most important points, which is not just that it's unfair and then people argue, well, what about the employer? He put up the money, doesn't he deserve to be? That's all a distraction. Because the important thing to understand is this. C1 is always going to be less than D. The wages paid out to the worker are never enough to buy back the product that he produces. There is always more products created than there are wages paid out to the worker. And this is the built-in problem of capitalism, the problem of overproduction. And it is always there in the capitalist economy. It never goes away. And they have invented all kinds of crazy mechanisms to try and deal with the problem of overproduction. Part of the reason that the US government has purchased billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese only to bury it in a cave in Springfield, Missouri, is to deal with this problem. It is an ongoing present problem, and it's a problem acknowledged by most capitalist economists. John Maynard Keynes said the problem was underconsumption rather than overproduction, but he was pointing to the same problem. The military-industrial complex in the United States is an effort to deal with this problem, to keep spending going. There's all kinds of mechanisms that they've invented to try and resolve this problem, but it gets worse. What is the capitalist always trying to do? He wants to maximize the amount of profit he makes. And one of the main ways they do that is with what's called labor-saving technology. Get rid of workers and replace workers with machines. As they eliminate workers from the process of production, as there's fewer and fewer workers involved, as machines take the place of workers, the role of C in production decreases. There's a little bit of a problem with that. As C goes down, C2 also goes down, right? As C decreases, C2 also decreases. And as the role of the worker in production is reduced, the rate of profit that the capitalist makes goes down. And this is called the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Only human labor creates value. And this is something that Adam Smith acknowledged. This is something some of the popes even acknowledge. Human labor creates all value. And so when you reduce the role of human labor in production, the amount of value created decreases, and the ability of the capitalist to extract surplus value also decreases. So this causes the capitalist to have to churn out even more products because he's making less and less of a profit on the overall product. He's making less and less of a percentage, so he has to churn them out. So this problem of the worker never being able to buy back what he produces and more products being created than are necessary, this problem becomes exacerbated. And this points to what is understood to be the deeply irrational nature of the capitalist system.
Yep. And that is the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And that is the problem, is that the more efficient technology becomes, the more erratic the market becomes. The more the market becomes glutted with products that cannot be sold, the harder it is for the worker to buy back what is produced, and all of these problems increase. So there you go. I will add, just to finish off, this is all in this book that I'll be putting out next week, because you can't reiterate these concepts enough. And that, I thought that presentation that I gave on here, how could a revolution actually happen in America, where I talk about the difference, the breaking with Marx's spirituality, but embracing Marx's economics and the anti-monopoly coalition and all of this. I thought this all should be in a book, and I should have the quotes from Marx. And I spent some time yesterday going through The Poverty of Philosophy and Capital Volume 3, and some of the works of Marx I haven't drawn from as much in order to back up all of this. And this will all be in the book. So get a copy of this book next week when it comes out, because we need to be clear on all of this. And, I think this is a fair question. If you're at all interested in this, how could a revolution actually happen in America? Well, it's all going to be in this book. So there we go. There we go. Now, New Jersey Dan said, I think you missed my last question. Well, I just haven't been streaming, that's why, about Henry Clay and the American system. I also have another question. Do you think wokeness and cancel culture contributed to a brain drain on the left side of the political spectrum? And do you think it served as a prelude to the upcoming years of lead? Thank you. That's interesting. It did wokeness and cancel culture contribute to a brain drain? So you have to wonder, there's a culmination of trends. There's that old thing about the butterfly effect. The guy goes back in time and he steps on a butterfly, and then he comes back to our present time, and completely unrelated things are different, because everything is a product of everything around it, and everything that happens is tied in with everything else. I often tell people, don't have regrets. Try not to regret, because whatever decision you made in your life, you made it because of the circumstances that you were in. And if you weren't in those circumstances, you wouldn't have made that decision. You did it based on the circumstances you were in, the knowledge that you had. You made what you thought was the best decision, or the decision that you ultimately made. And you can't go back and say, oh, if only I had done this, because you wouldn't have done that, would you? Because that's not the circumstances that you were in. Everything happens as a result of the context that it happens in. So with social media, on the one hand, you just have politics that is dumbed down. No one ever wins an internet argument, because people just stop reading what the other person says. They only read a few things and they respond to it. That's the problem with internet arguments. And social media, we have learned, you don't gain on social media by teaching people anything. You gain by pandering. If people really, really hate Trump, the way to get internet famous is to have a really shrill, over-the-top video hating on Trump that'll reinforce people who hate Trump and what they think. If you really like Donald Trump, the way to gain on social media is not to teach people anything. It's to make a video about how amazing Trump is that reinforces people who already like Trump. Social media, you don't gain by educating people, by telling them anything they don't know, by challenging their ideas. You gain by reinforcing. And that's one of the biggest problems with social media. And I don't think that's a manufactured problem. I think it's just the nature of the beast. I think that, we have now access to so much information. People only have so much time to look at things. They tend to look at things that reinforce the view that they already have. So there we go. The other thing about social media is that people have learned that calling people out and condemning other people is a great way to get views and likes and shares. And, that's just the reality. And that finding some random person, not a celebrity, often they do it to celebrities, but often just finding some random person who does something that makes other people on the internet mad and kind of mobilizing them to go after the other person is a kind of cheap way to, on the one hand, it gets you attention. On the other hand, people do it because it gives them the ability to feel like they're doing something. They're changing the world. People feel very, very powerless in our times. And so ganging up on some random person who did something wrong or is perceived to have done something wrong is a great way to make people that feel very, very powerless feel like they're doing something. Right? That's just part of it, right? Is that if people can gang up on somebody, and we saw the very beginnings of cancel culture before social media got going, we saw kind of experiments with it from Fox News. Fox News would go after teachers, college professors, kind of low-level people, and get them fired from their jobs and ruin their lives with Fox News, not with social media. And David Horowitz wrote a book called The Professors, and it was a list of professors that he basically doxed and called bad people, 101 of them. One of them was Grover Furr, who's a friend, who I appreciate his work, Dr. Grover Furr. And again, it was not arguing against what these people said, but just saying these people think this thing that makes them a bad person. So you, as the average person who feels powerless, well, you can become powerful by going after them, by going after this college professor, by calling and trying to get them fired from their job, etc. And we saw that with Fox News. And then when Obama got going, Obama learned early in his career that he could take a little case somewhere of racial injustice, right? And racial injustice happens all across America all the time. You can take a very small case of some little local incident. You can blow it up and get very emotional about it, and you can get the right wing to show their ugly racist side, and you can get every person who's ever experienced racism or discrimination or had a friend or a relative who's experienced it to get fired up, and that you can get people fired up about a very, very small local incident, and very emotional about it, and you don't have to change anything, right? You don't have to change anything. Nothing systemically has to actually change. And the first case like this was the Gina 6, and Facebook and Twitter were very new. Social media was a very new invention, and there was a fist fight in a small town in Louisiana, and the white kids got a very small punishment, and the black kids got a very harsh punishment. And so, with social media, the Obama networks got everyone wearing black for Gina and talking about the Gina 6 case. And this was a group of high school kids who got into a fist fight. It wasn't really a big deal. Was it unfair? I mean, based on what I know about the incident, which is not the whole story, obviously, because I never met the people involved. Based on what I know, yes, it was a case of racial injustice. They blew it up. And a lot of people felt like they could be active by, taking a position on it. And then on top of that, the right wing, there's a part of the right wing in America is if you ever say anything is racist, they just roll their eyes and go, there's no such thing as racism. Shut up. Stop complaining. They responded that way. And, it was a big net gain for Obama, even though it had nothing to do with Obama. And no laws were changed. Nothing really happened. I don't even know what happened with the Gina 6 case. But it was like the first case like this. Then as Obama's presidency got going, you had the Trayvon Martin case. And again, looks to me like, this kid was just walking through a neighborhood, and a guy with mental health issues who was a community patrol, who was always calling the police and, was, trying to be a hero, harassed him, and there was a fight. And that case, again, it looks like this was just a young guy who happened to be walking through a neighborhood, and this kind of right-wing vigilante guy, son of a judge, who was kind of a screw-up, George Zimmerman, who didn't have much going on, but wanted to pretend he was a cop by going through the neighborhood and going after people. He harassed this kid and jumped him and, whatever. And so, the kid died. Trayvon Martin was killed, and that became a big case. And again, everyone who's ever experienced racism or had a family member who's experienced it, or anyone who just kind of looked at the circumstances and saw the injustices, got very fired up about it. And then the right wing did their thing of there's no such thing as racism, and how do we know he wasn't there to rob people, and blah, 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 and showed their ugly side. And it was a gain for Obama. And so Obama kind of gained from talking about those cases. That was part of the Obama strategy. Now, George Zimmerman was eventually acquitted. I don't think that was the right thing. I think George Zimmerman, shouldn't have attacked Trayvon Martin. I don't think Trayvon Martin deserved to be attacked. And, I generally, based on what I know about the case, which again, I wasn't there, based on what I know about the case, George Zimmerman should have just left the kid alone. And based on that, he was not justified in jumping him and getting into a fight and, the situation that resulted. Now, you look at these kind of cases. Again, was any law changed as a result of the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin case? No. did anything change? No. I mean, it was just one of these kind of cases. But cancel culture is part of this. And it was somebody out there does something wrong, or is perceived of having done something wrong. And we all just, we all just get to feel like activists for going after that person. But cancel culture took on a very, very different character because it stopped being, obviously, we're talking about real cases that look like real racial injustice. But there are cases of people who make nasty tweets, make tweets that they think are sarcastic jokes that somebody finds offensive, and then the whole internet gets mobilized to go after them. It's not random, right? And the internet has always been rigged to some degree or other. It's way, 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 way more rigged than it has ever been. Especially since Trump's second term started, the internet is just so rigged. It is so completely rigged. So when some people get canceled and some people don't, right? And people get canceled when they haven't done anything. And people don't get canceled who do very, very bad things. And there's also like weird things that happen. For one thing is that when the internet mobs come for you, there's no appeasing them. There's no appeasing them. If J.K. Rowling, Peter Coffin had a very great essay about what he called the J.K. Rowling effect. J.K. Rowling had some concerns about the trans thing, very mild comments. And all she did was highlight somebody who had some concerns. And the mobs came at her. How dare she? She's transphobic. And she tried to apologize. But no. Oh, no. She couldn't. And so pretty soon, now J.K. Rowling is identified with gender critical, women that are critical of the trans thing. That was not the case. Didn't have to be that way. But immediately her name got associated with something that she wasn't even fully committed to. She just kind of had some concerns. And then the internet got really, really nasty. And they were demanding that she be banned from all the Harry Potter meetups. She invented Harry Potter. She wrote it. And look, and now, of course, the only people that are friendly to J.K. Rowling, she's been canceled by all the people associated with her brand. The only people that are friendly to her are people that really strongly agree with her. So now that becomes a big part of her identity, is believing that, and she has, and Gavin's got it. The same with Kanye, right? The same with Kanye. And the internet cancel culture, it does not change people's views. If anything, it just it forces people to dig in, because once you get canceled, there's no way out. Right? You can't apologize. You can't say, oh, I'm learning more about it. You just get swarmed. Meanwhile, the only people that will be nice to you are people that agree with whatever you're being canceled for, right? Everyone else is forced to disavow and disassociate from you. It's a really, really nasty, nasty thing that happens to people, and it doesn't change people's views, and it's just a negative aspect of our time. It is very much engineered from above, but not always, right? Not always. One thing is, I've been canceled about 100 times, and I could complain on here about all the times I've gotten canceled. That's not the point. Why have I been canceled, right? Am I a racist? Obviously not, right? Maybe there's been times in my life I've been insensitive. I always try to listen to any criticism that people might have, but, am I a Ku Klux Klan guy? Am I David Duke? Am I, advocating for white racial supremacy? Obviously not, right? I'm married to an immigrant. I literally videotaped women getting beaten up by the police. I'm, a lifelong anti-imperialist. Social media decided that when I said that as a socialist, I want a good life for the American people, I was a patriotic socialist, certain other people, because it's trendy on the left, that, it's just trendy to be anti-American, to burn the American flag, it's edgy, it's rebellious. Because I didn't do that, certain leftists decided to say that I was racist because I advocated patriotism. Well, Martin Luther King Jr. has flags at his rally. No one thinks he was racist. Bernie Sanders is very much loved by the lefty crowd. He has American flags at his rallies. But for some reason, Caleb having an American flag was proof that I was racist. Well, you'll notice that Haaretz, the daily newspaper of Israel, published a smear piece on me. after I spoke at a conference in Iran. And in the smear piece, they were trying to associate me. I debated against a white nationalist, Augustus Invictus. And they tried to say that because I debated against this white nationalist, I was a white nationalist. And then they linked articles published by the American Party of Labor, the APL. Well, why is Haaretz, the voice of the Mossad, the daily publication of Israel, the genocidal government, their state media, linking leftist publications? Well, it shows they're paying attention to it. And if you go to the Haaretz smear piece on me, there is literally a hyperlink to an article by the American Party of Labor. That's because the American Party of Labor has Mossad agents in it. And that, people in the Workers' World Party also repeated this smear against me. And there are Mossad agents in the Workers' World Party. I know this for a fact, right? And I could go into detail, but I'm not going to. And Mossad, decided that because they saw me as a friend of Iran, because they saw me as speaking at conferences in Iran, they decided to whip up a cancel culture campaign against me. And a lot of people went along with it. And they didn't probably have to do very much because the left are primed to do this. Calling people out is what they do. And so first, I was a white supremacist because I waved the American flag. And it was just a fact. I was actually a white nationalist, whatever. So then, then after that, it was, I met with Alexander Dugin. Well, Alexander Dugin's not a fascist, right? Alexander Dugin is just an important thinker in Russia. But the memo got sent out that I met with this scary Russian wizard man, and he is a white supremacist, which he is not, right? He's the main anti-Western thinker. I mean, if there's anyone who's not in favor of the Western, colonial order, it's Alexander Dugin. He has a critique of it that is mixed with conservatism and traditionalism and his Russian Orthodox faith. He knows very heavily the Marxist tradition, but he also knows traditionalism and Julius Evola and all kinds of stuff. But he's not a fascist. He's certainly not a white nationalist. But, he met with him. And they just kept coming. And they just kept coming. And what would happen was these big accounts, these very big social media accounts, run by people that, I don't know where they came from, but they just have huge social media accounts, will put out just straight up lies about me. And that was supposed to shut me up. The problem is it didn't shut me up. It didn't shut me up. I kept going. And I'm still here. And we just had a very successful CPI workshop. And actually, they realized that by canceling me, they were causing more people to be attracted to me. So now they've set up a couple rodeo clowns, a couple decoys who sound like me, that are agents, basically, that sound like me. And they cancel them. Which is kind of, for a while, they realized that by canceling me, they were just getting me more attention. So they created a couple rodeo clowns that shall not be named, and they canceled them to try and, so that anyone who might be attracted to the kind of things I'm saying and hear about me from being canceled goes to them. That's the game that they're playing. Whatever, we adjust. We're trying to recruit people in real life. We're changing the way we operate, right? The internet, you can't organize on the internet. The internet is rigged, and the internet is also just... it's, the kind of people that look for internet niches. It's not the kind of people that build a real organization. So whatever, but that's the game it's playing, and I intend to keep going. Is this I guess the question that New Jersey Dan brought up is this part of setting the stage for a years of lead? Let me put it this way, right? Internet meanness is very traumatizing for anyone who's on the receiving end of it. Part of the Charlie Kirk phenomenon, right? Forget everything about Charlie Kirk, right? The fact that Charlie Kirk was killed, and we all saw that video of him being killed in this very graphic, ugly way. And then the memo went out, and all these leftists were on the internet saying, yes, I'm so glad he got killed. You'll notice that right-wing social media just inculcated all their followers with that. Why was that done? That was to traumatize them. They're all traumatized by seeing somebody that they like, somebody that they look up to, be killed. And then all these people saying they're happy about it. And it traumatized them. And the idea is they then feel fear, feel danger, feel hatred for those people, and they're not going to be able to hear a rational argument. So when you talk about cancel culture being part of the years of lead, right? That's what the issue is that internet meanness traumatizes people. Part of the problem with the internet is you don't see the other person, right? When you're talking to somebody and having an argument with them, you don't just hear the words they say, you see the reaction on their face. So if you're hurting their feelings, for example, you see the person's face go down, and you think, okay, maybe I need to back off. Or, that human interactions in person are very different than internet interactions, especially with Facebook arguments, with text. You don't see the other person's reaction. You might be really hurting the other person's feelings, but you don't see that. You might be, you also don't see the tone. People often read the tone, right? You can say the exact same phrase, but with a different intonation, and it hits people differently. And people interpret the tone of texts and Facebook messages to be much more hostile than it is. And the internet really brings out the worst in people. Because of that, people don't realize how much they're harming other people. People take offense and interpret what people are saying as much more hurtful than it actually is. And the internet makes negative interactions between people much more psychologically scarring, right? That when people are in person, yes, they can get very angry and they can get very hateful, but generally, just because you're in the same room with somebody, there's a level of politeness that you will show them. The internet takes that away. Yes, there are circumstances where in real life the gloves come off and people fight. That's true. But because it can get there, people generally try to avoid that and they're polite. And the internet makes disagreements between people much more painful psychologically for people to deal with. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you might have a relative who you don't agree with. You're a Democrat, they're a Republican. They're pro-trans, you're anti-trans, whatever. So you just decide, hey, when I go over to grandma's house, we might talk about how much we don't like, we might talk about how much we don't like rock and roll music, but we don't talk about this, right? The internet, unfortunately, with Facebook, with Twitter, everyone's everything is out there in your face, okay? So you can't just not talk about it because it's going to come up in grandma's feed. And grandma has to make a decision to not react to your thing. And you have to make a decision not to react to grandma. That's part of it, right? Is that you can just censor yourself when you're around somebody you know disagrees. But the social media apps go out of their way to show you content from people that you disagree with because they want interaction. So, if grandma really likes Trump and you really hate Trump, if grandma posts I love Trump, that's going to show up on your feed because they want you to respond. They get more money the more you interact. So social media is rigged so that when grandma says I love Trump and you hate Trump, that comes up on your feed because they want you to go into the comments and say, Grandma, Trump is an evil, awful person. And then they want grandma to respond and say, no, you're just a young whipper. And this tears apart families and it destroys social relations. And it's about making money. I don't think it's a conspiracy. It's largely just to make money. That Facebook gets more money, the more interactions that there is. And so the more that you kind of bait people into fighting with people, but that destroys relationships. So there's many, many layers to this. This is a long answer to your question, Dan, because it's not so simple. There are real conspiracies that go on, and there is a conspiracy. Cancel culture is, people get canceled. They plan to cancel people. It happens. I have observed directly real conspiracies against myself and also just conspiracies I've seen in real life. There are conspiracies that happen, yes. But a lot of the cancel culture stuff is just kind of the result of a number of different factors coming together. The market, people wanting to be activists, Facebook applications. It's complicated. All of this is very, very complicated. I wish I could give you a simple answer. It's not so simple. I do believe, and what I argue, is that they are trying to foment a years of lead in America because they don't want the anti-war, pro-civil liberties, pro-economic development, working class majority to assert itself. It's not going to assert itself in some kind of communist revolution because a big chunk of the people that are mad about our freedoms being taken away and mad about the wars interpret things in a right-wing way. And also the so-called socialist movement that exists is not real. It's just, it's largely just a bunch of kind of woke people doing their woke thing, and maybe we'll get some free buses or something. However, everywhere you go in America, the American people are tired of these wars. They know our freedoms are being taken away, and they know our living standard is going down, and they want something to be done about it. And the gap between the American people and what the politicians are doing is massive. And it's going to have to result in a mass movement because the political class is owned by the Israel lobby. It's owned by the international bankers and the Zionists and the big corporations. And they are determined to keep things going the way they are. And the American people want things to go in the opposite direction. Capitalism is going one way, and what the American people want is going this way. And there's a collision. So right now, the way to manage this collision is to make politics and make dissent so confusing that basically all the people that want to do something about it get so confused and spend their time fighting with each other and don't know who's on what side, that the establishment just kind of wins by default. And that's what happened in Italy during the years of lead. In Italy in the 1970s, they were going to leave NATO. They were going to leave NATO. The public on the left and the right, the Communist Party and the Christian Democrat Party, wanted to leave NATO. And the people were not happy about, their relationship with America, economically speaking. They wanted their own industries to become more prosperous. Italy was not doing too well in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. And so the CIA fomented Operation Gladio to keep them in NATO. And it involved funding communist groups like the Red Brigades. It involved funding and arming fascist groups like the Italian Social Movement. It involved, fomenting all kinds of political violence. And even though the Italian people overwhelmingly wanted to leave NATO and they wanted Italy to become more economically independent and maybe have a better relationship with the Soviet Union, the Communist Party certainly wanted that. And they probably could have won an election if it wasn't for the years of lead and for Operation Gladio. The unpopular status quo won by default because the intelligence apparatus successfully fomented widespread political violence. And I think that is what's going on. And I think that the romantification and the celebration of Luigi Mangione and the way social media responded and mainstream media responded to the murder of Charlie Kirk, I do believe that was not accidental. I believe that they are trying to quell an insurgency. They don't want the dissidents in America to get organized and actually begin to assert their will. And so they are, at this point, trying to foment some kind of American years of lead. And that is what I have been warning people about. All right, next question. And this is it. They sent like a 6-part question here. And I'm just going to go through it. This is someone anonymously said, is anti-Semitism just the socialism of fools? Where's that come from? 2, I never got why some ex-Soviet Jews became Zionists, not even Zionists, just bloodthirsty Likudniks. 3, why is it people in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union got so virulently anti-communist, especially in Poland? 4, what about reactionary and anti-Semitic thought appeals to young American people, white and Latino men? 5, even as you say you aren't a Marxist, you still tie yourself to the legacy of the Soviet Union. Why is it younger generations in pro-Palestine circles spend their time denigrating it, saying the Bolsheviks killed 30 million Christians? 6, why do tradcasts engage in conspiratorial thinking about Jews and secret societies at varying levels of real? A lot of questions there. All right, first of all, anti-Semitism, the way it is generally used now, it just refers to ethnic bigotry against Jews, okay? The term originally referred to debunked genetic theories. The term anti-Semitism was originally coined by people who believed that Jews were genetically different than other white Europeans and that was to account for differences, etc. That's been debunked. There is no genetic difference between white European Jews and white European Christians. The reason for that is that throughout the Middle Ages, thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews, millions of Jews, converted to Christianity. And so there is no genetic Jew, right? It just doesn't exist, right? There's no biological Jew. That was a big part of Nazi ideology, was this belief that Jews are a Semite. They're the special race called the Semites. They're not, okay? So that's what the term originally meant. Nowadays, the term generally just refers to the belief that, ethnic bigotry against Jews. Well, all ethnic bigotry is wrong. And I oppose any form of ethnic bigotry. There is kind of a unique form of ethnic bigotry against Jews because in Europe, in European civilization, in the time of feudalism, they were set aside to be moneylenders. In feudalism, there is still a currency, but most people never touch money in feudalism. Peasants, they don't need money. They grow the land, they have their crops, but they generally, in a classical feudal society, peasants never touch money. They never buy anything. They never spend anything. In feudalism, the amount of people that have money and spend money is very limited. You have the merchants, and you may have the royalty. They have their money. They spend things. Most people don't interact with currency. In feudalism in Europe, because the Roman Catholic Church forbid lending money at interest, which is in the Bible, right? It condemns that. Also in the Torah, also in the Quran, feudalism generally forbids lending money at interest. However, if you're going to have merchants who sell products and all that, you're going to need somebody to lend money. So they made an exception, and Jewish people were allowed to lend money. And so they set aside special places that Jewish people lived, where they were cut off from the rest of society, where they lived. And there was a whole culture that developed around the idea of Jews being different, They were, basically in medieval Europe, if you didn't convert to Christianity, they killed you. Jews were the one exception. They were the one group of people that was allowed to not convert to Christianity. And they lived separately than everybody else, and a lot of the rules of medieval Europe didn't apply to them because the system needed somebody to handle money, needed somebody to lend money at interest, which went against the Catholic rules. They made a special exception for Jews. However, they were kept separate from everybody else, and they were kept in these areas they called ghettos, and because of that, a special kind of stigma, superstition, around Jews developed throughout Europe. And that's just a historical fact. So ethnic bigotry, religious bigotry against Jews is a little bit different in that it's part of the legacy of feudalism in Europe. And as capitalism was emerging, there was a lot of confusion. And actually, if you read Karl Marx's essay that he wrote on the Jewish question, he basically argues that there is what he calls a Jewish culture that developed as a result of feudalism. And he said, I want nothing to do with it. I don't identify with this. And he says some pretty nasty things, I guess, things about Jewish culture that are not particularly nice or sensitive. But he basically makes the point, yeah, this is my heritage. I want nothing to do with this. I'm not interested in organizing Jewish people on the basis of being Jewish. I have no desire to associate with this. And he doesn't consider it to be a real culture, and he doesn't consider, fighting for religious freedom for Jews to be a worthwhile thing. It's a pretty intense essay that Marx wrote when he was in his 20s, basically saying, that the fight to preserve Jewishness and preserve Jewish culture, I want nothing to do with it, right? So when you talk about anti-Semitism, you're talking about, kind of the wider stigma and belief that Jews are different that is rooted in the way feudalism was practiced in Europe. That's what anti-Semitism is. Now, as a result of anti-Semitism, many Jewish people also believed we are different, and the Jewish religion, right, that developed, the Talmudic Jewish religion, was largely based on we will not become Christians, right? That Judaism has been around since the time of Abraham, but there were many different interpretations, even in the day of Jesus, right? You had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, etc. You had many different interpretations of the Jewish religion. A couple hundred years after the death of Christ, when Christianity was proliferating, a group of rabbis got together and they had a series of polemics and exchanges between them that got compiled into a book called the Talmud. And the Talmud laid the basis for what we now consider to be modern Judaism. Now, there are obviously some Orthodox Jews that don't accept the Talmud. A lot of Hasidic Jews reject the Talmud, only follow the Torah. However, the Talmud, most modern Jews draw their religion from the Talmud. The Talmud is largely Jews getting together and saying, we're not going to become Christians. We don't want to be Christians, so we need to define why it is that we are not Christians. And they wrote this document called the Talmud. The modern Jewish religion, Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, a lot of Orthodox Judaism, except for very extreme Orthodox Judaism that only follows the Torah, is based on the Talmud, right? And the Talmud is very much based on the idea we are different, we are separate. and we are going to maintain this religion. We do not accept Christianity. We reject various things about Christianity, various aspects of Christianity that make it non-Jewish. For example, anyone can become a Christian. Christianity is all about proselytizing and converting people, right? Whereas the Jewish religion, you're born into it. You are Jewish because you're born that way, and you're born in a group, and it's very hard to become Jewish. You have to ask 3 times. It's quite a hard process if you're not born Jewish to become Jewish. Well, when Talmudic Judaism emerged, they said, yeah, we want to make that part of our tradition. We don't convert people. We're not trying to convince people to become Jewish. We are a separate group of people with a separate chosen mission. We don't want to recruit people. Things like that. Legalism. Jesus went out of his way to say the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. All these rules, we don't have to follow it. Well, especially Orthodox Judaism makes a point of we do have to follow these rules because that's what makes us not Christian is we have the Torah. We have this special set of rules to follow. And no, it's not about just love your God. And no, we have a special set of rules. And again, I'm generalizing. Judaism, like every religion, has many different interpretations. Reform Jews are very, very different than conservative Jews, very, very different than Orthodox Jews. And even among the Orthodox Jews, there are big, big disagreements. I heard that there's a camera company in New York City. It's one of the major camera and electronics stores. It's called B&H. And it's all different Hasidic Jews who own it. And they fight with each other like crazy because they're in different sects. Right? And some of the Orthodox Jewish sects don't even accept the Talmud. They only follow the Torah. So I'm generalizing here. But generally, modern Judaism comes out of the Talmud, and it is based on, okay, we're not Christians, so we want to define not being Christians. So keep in mind then, Jews, as they're practicing Talmudic Judaism, they're forcibly separated. There are pogroms where every so often they break into the Jewish area, the ghetto, and burn it down and kill all the people, or there's brutal crimes that the folks are subjected to. But also, they have access to education. They're allowed to discuss ideas that Christians aren't allowed to discuss. They're allowed to lend money at interest, etc. So it's a complicated situation, right? As a result of that situation, you have the mindset developing that Lenin called the spirit of the ghetto, the idea that we are just different. And that's a part of Talmudic Judaism, that we are just different, we are just special, we are God's chosen people, we're a special, not just a special religion, but a special ethnic group, right? Even if you never practice the religion, if you're part of this special ethnic group, you're special. We're inherently different, we can never fit in. Lenin and Marx both denounce that. And both of them are of Jewish descent. Rosa Luxemburg is also of Jewish descent. And they say, no. We want to assimilate. We want to be just like everybody else. We want to build a broad working class movement. Well, an atheist named Theodor Herzl came along, and even though he was an atheist, he said, we Jews are just so different. What we need to do is we need to go to the British Empire and say, give us a chunk of your empire, and we will set up a country of our own, a Jewish country, and we will prove that we are good allies of Western colonialism. We'll just have our own separate country. That's Zionism. Marxism and Leninism, Marx and Lenin and Stalin and all of them vehemently denounced Zionism and called it a reactionary trend of the Jewish bourgeoisie. It wasn't until after World War II the Soviet Union kind of supported Zionism, and then they regretted it really quickly. In 1948, yes, the Soviet Union allowed and enabled Israel to come into existence, and a couple years later they rejected it. They started finding Jewish Zionist spies all across the Soviet Union. There was the Doctors Plot that tried to kill Stalin. There were pockets of Zionist spies in Czechoslovakia and other places. It was Israeli spies that leaked Khrushchev's secret speech and enabled it to be published in the New York Times. And Israel started putting out propaganda against the Soviet Union, claiming that the Soviet Union was anti-Semitic, etc. So communism is not a Jewish conspiracy. The Marxist, and the Marxist Jews hated Zionism and wanted to integrate with non-Jews, and Zionism saw Marxism as its greatest enemy. And these are the historical facts, but it doesn't match the right-wing worldview, right? In Eastern Europe, in Poland, you have a strand that has developed of Polish people that are proud to be Polish, that blame the problems of Poland in the 90s on the Soviet Union, and also reject the European Union and just, a kind of like Polish right-wing nationalism. that is, that kind of resents Russia and uses Russia as kind of the scapegoat for a lot of their problems, but also is critical of immigration, also critical of the European Union. So Poland's kind of a unique situation. But in the majority of Eastern European countries, poll after poll after poll, not Polish person, but opinion poll, shows people saying life was better before the fall of the Soviet Union. I have tweeted out those numbers. There's whole pages about this on Wikipedia. Communist nostalgia, it's called. Right? And you can read it. Country after country after country, people say life was better before the fall of the Soviet Union. So Poland's a unique situation where you have this kind of nationalist right-wing government that is against the European Union, but also has a historical narrative that is against Russia, where they have a unique kind of situation. There are pro-Soviet people and pro-Russian, Russia-friendly people in Poland. I've met them, right? But in most of the former Soviet Union and the former Eastern Bloc, polls show people are very, very much of the opinion that the fall of the Soviet Union was not good for their country economically, that life was better. And that doesn't match what, everybody knows, right? Oh, haven't you ever talked to somebody who came from a communist country? Well, especially in Russia today, Soviet nostalgia, the belief that life was better before the fall of the Soviet Union, is at an all-time high. Stalin is wildly popular. This is kind of an arrogant thing that gets thrown out by anti-communists all the time. Oh, anyone who actually lived under communism, well, actually, they do polls among the people who live in former communist countries, and a lot of people say life was better under communism than afterwards, and they never tell you that, now do they? What about reactionary and anti-Semitic thought appeals to American young people? Well, there's a couple things. I think that, okay, first of all, the problem with anti-Semitism is that how do I put this? The problem with Zionism, I should say. And the problem with Zionism and the way Zionists are very, very sensitive is that there are a lot of true things that you're not allowed to say without being called an anti-Semite. Nobody likes that, right? If you tell kids you are not allowed to say the word booger, they all want to say the word booger. Zionism has attached itself, they have this strategy of no one's allowed to say that Israel has, that the media is biased in favor of Israel. It very obviously is. But if you say that, they say, oh, you're being anti-Semitic. Jews don't control the media. How dare you? So that leads everyone to think, oh, geez, maybe Israel and Jews do control the media, right? That's what it leads people to think. Well, it's not an issue of Jews controlling the media. It's that the media is part of the Western imperialist apparatus. Israel is part of Western imperialism, etc. But, Israel, they've trained all their followers and all their supporters to have this reaction that if anyone ever says media is biased in favor of Israel, you just point at them and say, you're not allowed to say that. Well, then people want to say that, right? And that political correctness is something that especially young men don't appreciate, right? In particular, it's kind of, we've kind of developed they talk about how there's kind of, the way men are, right? The educational system has become a little bit anti-male, right? More women go to college than men do, and that, we have, there's a lot of, the overwhelming majority of elementary school teachers are female, and that kind of the way boys tend to act is increasingly viewed as not okay by our educational system. Girls do better in our educational system. And so, there's a lot of resentment that develops among young men around how the educational system works, how they're kind of constantly being perceived as wrong, constantly being told that they can't act the way that they should act, etc. So because of that, Zionism has this list of words you're not allowed to say and list of things you're not allowed to say or else you're anti-Semitic. Young men that kind of resent that, they then develop this attraction to what we perceive as anti-Semitism. The pro-Palestine circles, you're talking about right-wing pro-Palestine circles. The leftists at pro-Palestine rallies are not saying they're not saying anti-communist things. Unfortunately, the majority of people demonstrating for Palestine are woke people who hate Russia, woke people who are obsessed with pronouns and transgenderism and everything you ever heard. And they're not talking that way. You're talking about conservative pro-Palestine people who largely don't attend the demonstrations, who largely are online or on the internet only, right? I will say there's a very, very big presence of anti-Israel conservatives that do say this anti-communism stuff on the internet. They haven't manifested themselves in any real activism. Occasionally something might happen, but But yes, on the internet, there are a lot of conservative young men that are anti-Israel that do think, communism is a Jewish conspiracy and all of that. But that's based on the fact that they view the left as their enemy. They're reacting to leftism and political correctness. They're coming at things from a conservative viewpoint, and conservatism, communism is the left. They see the politically correct people who get on their nerves as the left. They see Zionism as a form of political correctness. They don't like it. They only look to right-wing sources, and a lot of them are traditionalist Catholics. A lot of them are, right-wing nationalists, etc. And so they're going to draw from sources that hate communism, that view Jewish people as communist, and so this all makes sense. So I think I've answered your long questions there, someone. I think I answered your questions. Maybe I didn't directly answer all of them, but I basically gave you an answer. So then John said, did Bob Avakian have anything to do with this horrible Two Scissors letter? He didn't sign it, but it has his name all over it. So Bob Avakian is the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party, the RCP. And I guess there's a letter. I looked this up after I saw John's Buy Me a Coffee that came in. There's a letter called the Two Scissors letter, which is saying that it opposes the USA attacking Iran, but it also says that there's all these people in Iran that are considered political prisoners, and that the Iranian government is bad. And it's being signed by a lot of celebrities. And basically, John is pointing out that the Revolutionary Communist Party, which says it's against the war against Iran, calls Iran fascist routinely, equates Iran with Nazi Germany, and says a lot of stuff that Zionists and imperialists say about Iran, but then says they're against the bombing. And every year on International Women's Day in Berlin, Germany, RCP leaders fly to Berlin and they join an anti-Iran rally sponsored by the Mujahideen Khalq, the MEK terrorists. They have an anti-Iran rally on International Women's Day. The RCP is part of it. And the RCP, they have a vendetta. It's actually quite interesting. Bob Avakian, the leader of the RCP, in 1979, when the Islamic Revolution of Iran happened and the embassy was seized, the RCP actually made a point of going out of their way to support the hostage takers and to defend Khomeini a little bit. They actually, they had a pamphlet, "It's Not Our Embassy." They would burn American flags at anti-Iran rallies and get beaten up. And a lot of Persian Maoists, Persian communists who had fled Iran during the, under the Shah, went back. In the aftermath of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, there was a lot of confusion, and the communists were very, very visible, and Khomeini was the new leader, and the Islamic Republic emerged, but there were many people who thought that the revolution was just going to continue and it would become a communist revolution, and it did not. And the Mujahideen Khalq, the Islamo-Marxist terrorists, blew up the parliament, killed 81 members of the parliament, and the government of Iraq, which was a leftist government, a Ba'athist Arab socialist government aligned with the Soviet Union, invaded Iran. And so on that basis, there was a big crackdown on communists. And because the communists were atheists and they did not recognize an Islamic constitution, the communist parties in Iran became illegal. And there were a number of communists in Iran that were executed. The Mujahideen Khalq in particular, which is the Islamo-Marxist group, a lot of their members were killed. They ended up moving to Iraq, working with Saddam Hussein, and now they're just Zionists. They assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists in coordination with the American government, etc. There was another group in Iran called the Fedayeen, the People's Fedayeen guerrillas that were trying to wage like a guerrilla war in the countryside. There was the official Communist Party of Iran, the Soviet-aligned Communist Party was called the Tudeh Party, and the Tudeh Party became illegal, and I think they changed their name. They've set up a number of Islamic organizations that followed the Islamic law, but were still pushing kind of a socialist pro-worker message. There are various different groups, but the Maoists in particular, there was some kind of uprising in the early 1980s that was kind of put down. They kind of launched an uprising during the Iraq-Iran war that was immediately crushed. And because of that, the RCP, even though they were big defenders of Iran in '79 on the basis of kind of their anti-Americanism, flag-burning thing, they tend to promote some of the most extreme anti-Iran propaganda, kind of following, from kind of bitter, communists who have fled from Iran that are of their particular line. And so, you're saying that this letter sounds like something they would do. It doesn't surprise me. And that, look, there's a lot of confusion about Iran from leftists, right? The Islamic government of Iran is very conservative. And many Iranians that I know have said they need big reforms, in terms of the way women are treated in the courts. I mean, the way women are treated in Iran is not what you've been told, right? Women in Iran definitely drive cars and vote. There are a lot of women in the Iranian parliament. There are women that are brigadier generals in the army. Women in Iran are in universities at a higher rate than men are. Things aren't perfect for women. Their testimony doesn't count as much as a man's does in court. There are other aspects of, kind of the traditional Islamic laws in Iranian courts that are not favorable to women in the way we view things in the West, at least. There are some leftists that will kind of join in this critique of the Islamic system that comes from the West. And that's not to say that Iran doesn't need reform and that they aren't trying to modernize or at least adjust their legal system and other aspects of their country. But that said, there's a big effort to destabilize and overthrow the Islamic Republic of Iran. The USA is bombing them right now. And that whatever criticisms people might have, there is a big imperialist propaganda campaign to destabilize Iran. And there are groups for example, the Mujahideen Khalq or the Pahlavists, the monarchists, and others. They are just part of Israel and America's plot to destroy Iran. And there's not anything more to it than that. And they will use anything. They don't care, and they will lie, right? When I was in college, there was a poster everywhere of two guys being hung. And it said, oh, in Iran, they kill all the gay people. Well, I actually investigated. Those guys were not hung for being gay. They were hung for gang raping a 13-year-old boy. A 13-year-old boy was gang raped, and two of the guys that were leaders of the gang rape got the death penalty. Well, you can argue the death penalty is wrong, it's immoral, right? We don't have it in many Western countries. But gang raping a child, a minor, is not the same thing as just being gay. And that this happens frequently, that there'll be cases of men who rape young boys and get the death penalty for it. And American media makes it sound like they got killed just for being gay. And they will play games with the translation, and that, obviously the kind of anti-gay slurs that are used for gay men in general and also used for male child molesters might be similar. And so they'll say, oh, look, here's this judge, sentenced this guy to death for being a faggot, right? That's, that might be the way it's translated. Oh, this guy was sentenced to death for being a faggot. Well, he wasn't sentenced to death for being gay, though. He was sentenced to death because he raped a child, or he raped somebody, or and it gets mistranslated intentionally to create propaganda. In Iran, right, in theory, one could get the death penalty for being gay, but it's never been enforced because it's impossible under their legal system to convict somebody for being gay, because there has to be at least 3 witnesses that saw the homosexual act take place, not heard about it, not were in the same room, but actually saw something go into something else, right? And there have to be 3 people that saw the penetration actually happen and can testify under oath that the penetration actually happened. There has never been any case where 3 people testified that they saw the penetration actually happen. And also, all 3 of those people are themselves criminal by testifying that, because they are then guilty of a crime themselves because they didn't try to stop it. So there's never been a case of anyone actually getting the death penalty simply for being gay in Iran, because of the fact that the way the legal system is set up, there have to be 3 witnesses who actually saw the penetration. That's never happened. And the same for adultery, right? In theory, in Iran, one can get the death penalty for cheating on one's spouse. But again, there have to be 3 witnesses that actually saw something go into something else and can explain why they were there and why they didn't try to stop it. And that's never happened because it just doesn't happen, right? So it's kind of weird how these things work. But my source on this is the New York Times. Go and read the New York Times, right? The other thing about Iran that doesn't make sense, and Alex brought it up, is that transgender surgery happens all the time in Iran. In Iran, there are a lot of doctors. It's kind of like Cuba in the fact that because they have more of a state-run economy, they have invested in getting a lot of their people into medical school, providing medical education, training a lot of people to be doctors. They have a surplus of doctors. And one of the common complaints in Cuba is that there are guys with medical degrees who are cab drivers because they just don't have enough room for all the people that have gotten medical training in Cuba to go into their medical system. In Iran, they have a similar problem. So one of the ways they've dealt with this is that Iran provides transgender surgery very cheaply to foreigners, and I believe it's free for Iranian citizens. And they do provide transgender surgery. In Iran, you can be trans, you just can't be intersex. You can be male, or you can change your sex to be female. You can be female, or you can change your sex to be male. There's none of this intersex stuff. You become one or the other, right? If you don't like what you're born as, you can have surgery and become the other one, but you can't be in between, right? So it's not transgenderism in the sense of the West. There's none of this, I feel like a woman today. I feel none of that, right? You're a man, you can have the surgery and become a woman, and then you're a woman. And if you're a woman, you can have the surgery and become a man, but then you're a man, right? And that's the way they do it. And they feel that that is in line with, the Islamic tradition. It's actually quite interesting in that they're, I guess you could say, pro-trans, but not pro-trans in the Western way, right? Not in the sense they're not trying to break down gender, right? In the West, the transgender movement is focused on the idea there is no such thing as gender. Gender is a patriarchal construct. Everyone just be themselves. There's no male. There's no female. That's not what they're saying in Iran. In Iran, there is male, there is female, and you can switch. But there is male and there is female, and they're very rigid about that. I find that to be very, very interesting. It's kind of a different approach. But there you go. And now there's another question has come in from Fashopes. Can you speak a little bit about the cultural feeling within the late Cold War normal? Yeah, that's what I grew up with. I've heard you speak a lot about the culture during the Bush administration, not much during the Clinton administration. From the time of Jimmy Carter up until Barack Obama took office, the 2008 financial crisis, there was just kind of a certain set of rules in American politics. And it was different, right? Until the 70s, it was quite acceptable among white people to be a racist in America, to openly say racist things. During the 1970s, as a result of the 1960s, as a result of things that may not seem like a big deal, like the show Roots being on television, and eventually they made Martin Luther King Day a national holiday. Martin Luther King became part of the educational system in America. As a result, starting in the 1980s, if one was going around saying things like black people are inferior to white people or using the N-word or things like that, that was not acceptable. Prior to the 1970s, among white people, that was considered very acceptable. It stopped being that way. Also, from the time of Jimmy Carter up until the Obama administration, Christianity was kind of considered the default position, right? There were Jews, there were Muslims, there were ethnic communities that have different religious beliefs, and there were certainly intellectuals and other people that were atheistic, but Christianity was kind of the default position. Almost every elected official was a Christian. You had, maybe like Joe Lieberman, who was an Orthodox Jew here and there, but you definitely didn't have any atheists elected to office, and it was just assumed that one was a Christian, and that even people who didn't believe kind of went along with it. What else was part of the late Cold War normal? There was this belief that everybody had, and I remember this very, very well, and this is part of why I was quite, I reacted very strongly to it, because it was just sickening. There was this thing people had about America, right? Which, that's the country we live in. I love my country, I love my people, but at the same time, there was this weird thing where if you started criticizing U.S. imperialism or capitalism, people would say, "You hate America." What did that mean? No one knew what it meant, but it was this thing that you couldn't be too much of a dissident or you were against America. It was just, and no one knew what it meant. And also, everyone constantly said, America's the greatest country in the world. And how did we know this? Based on what measurement? No one could ever explain it, but it was just a fact. America is the greatest country in the world. And nobody knew why. Greatest in what sense? Did we have the most money? Did we have the best government system? Whatever. No one could explain it, but we were the greatest country in the world. America was the greatest country in the world. And you better not be against America. And if somebody was talking a little bit too dissident, they were against America. And they were blaming America, and they were an America hater, and you shouldn't be an America hater. And Christianity was the default position, and it wasn't acceptable to be a racist, right? That generally, and that was a big change, right? It wasn't acceptable to be a racist, but you had to love America and think America is the greatest country in the world. If you weren't Christian, that was like a double take, right? But if you were a Jew, okay. If you were a Muslim, that was definitely, people didn't even know what that was until 9/11. But you could be a Jew, okay, well, you're Jewish, right? The Holocaust was bad, and the Old Testament of the Bible, okay, but being an atheist, that was not cool. Being anything other than a Christian or a Jew was like weird, even people who didn't really believe went along with it because people would think you were a bad person if you were not religious. What else about the late Cold War normal? What else about it was interesting? The late Cold War normal in American politics. I don't know. People used to think, if you said things about COINTELPRO, for example, right? If you said the FBI had gone after black liberation fighters, people just rolled their eyes and thought that was a conspiracy theory. It's weird because that was all public record. But if you ever mentioned that, I remember being in college and talking about COINTELPRO, and people said, oh, yeah, the FBI went after dissidents. Bullshit. Well, it did. But people just thought, oh, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. And then if you started saying things that, were well documented and true about the U.S. government, about foreign policy, people would just think that was a conspiracy theory and roll their eyes. This wasn't true in the black community, certainly not the America greatest country in the world. There was a large layer of the black community that was influenced by black nationalism, et cetera, who didn't think that. And then there was a layer of people, in California, people on college campuses that were influenced by the New Left. But the bulk of the American population, they changed on whether or not it was okay to be a racist. That was the big change. Prior to the 70s, it was okay to be a racist among a lot of white people. And there was still plenty of racism, but the racism was not framed as racism. And that was the thing. There were plenty of racist people that I grew up around, but they didn't think they were racist, right? They just said, there's no such thing. Racism is over. It's in the past. Why are black people always complaining? That was the argument, right? It was that affirmative action is unfair to whites. They didn't frame it as we're racist, we think we're better. That was never the argument. It was always the other people are the racists. It's whites are now the victims of this anti-racism, of affirmative action. That was kind of how things were framed. Republicans generally, the argument was that racism is gone. It's in the past. Jim Crow is over. So why are black people always complaining? That was kind of the argument. But it was not acceptable among any circles to say that racism was, to preach blatant racism was not acceptable. What else about the late Cold War normal, right? Again, there was this big thing about America. America is the greatest country in the world. It was this very stupid, America is just great, and if you don't like it, you're disrespecting the military or whatever. What else about the late Cold War normal? I don't know. That was kind of how it was. And that there were certain little pockets of dissent, right? Black nationalism, Minister Farrakhan, that was certainly, they didn't go along with this. On the right, there was the dissident right? What you might call the John Birch Society, the militia movement. But again, they were just a little pocket. Pat Buchanan kind of gave voice to them, and there was kind of little pockets, on the dissident right. What else was there? There was an activist left, and the left was really a left, right? They knew what socialism and communism actually meant. They were trying to build a working class movement. They hadn't, completely derailed into wokeism. The worker cooperative thing, there were just little Marxist-Leninist groups left over from the 70s. That's what I got involved with. I was in the Workers' World Party. Prior to that, I was around a Maoist group. And I paid attention. I found the left to be very, very fascinating. Yeah, that's the late Cold War normal in American politics. And a big part of the late Cold normal also was Republicans thought poverty didn't exist. And and I noticed that was a big shift, right? Fox News and all of that, for the longest time, their argument was there is no such thing as poverty. And that John Stossel, he wasn't Fox News. He was on, I think, NBC or ABC, one of these networks. He would go to, he did stories. He would go to, the poorest neighborhood in the country. He'd go to the Bronx. Oh, this is the poorest district. And he'd walk around to people. Do you have a TV? Do you have a TV? Do you have a TV? Oh, look, this is the poorest thing. And all these people have TVs. There's no such thing as poverty in America. We need to get rid of food stamps. That was the Republican argument, was that there was no such thing as poverty, that there was no economic hardship, that anyone who said they're poor was just lazy, was just a bum, right? And that we need to get rid of food stamps. We need to get rid of all these programs because there's no such thing as poverty. That was part of the late Cold War normal. And that used to be the argument, right? That anyone who talked about poverty was just a lazy bum. And, that was a big part of Republican talking points. That immediately changed in 2008. Suddenly, 2008, right? All the Republican areas, the red states, people are getting their homes foreclosed. People are, and so suddenly it changed to, well, it's actually communism that causes poverty. What's the government is making everyone poor with their regulations. We just need to privatize everything. We don't have real capitalism. 2008, when Obama got in and Bush was out, suddenly that whole poverty's not real thing vanished, right? I remember that used to be a really big part of conservative media, was that poverty isn't real. Poverty is just made up. And they would do all kinds of crazy things to prove this. John Stossel was the worst, and now he's on Fox, but he used to be on more mainstream networks. And I remember he like pretended to be homeless, and he sat outside and he collected money for an hour, and then he brought the amount of money for an hour and did the math and said, oh, if you beg for money, if you're homeless on the street, you actually get, this many thousands of dollars a year. So there's no poverty because you can just beg for money. It was just ridiculous, right? And that was Rush Limbaugh. I remember part of his thing was that poor people are obese. It's true. Lower income people tend to be obese at a higher rate. And he said that proves that poor people are all just lazy and fat and stuffing their face with food instead of working for a living. Well, actually, it's due to the fact that poorer people don't have access to healthier food, that poorer people, they don't tend to be healthier food in their neighborhoods. Poorer people, it's not about that. But that was the argument. Oh, because poorer people tend to be obese at a higher rate, that proves there's no such thing as poverty, and all the poor people are just lazy people who are, fat and lazy. And I mean, this was a big part of what it meant to be a conservative, was that poverty wasn't real. Poverty was only self-inflicted or whatever. And that went away. That was a big change from the late Cold War normal. And during the Clinton years, that was a big thing too. Clinton got rid of welfare as we know it. And the Republicans' argument was there's no such thing as poverty. And that changed. That changed very, very quickly. What's interesting, though, is that, and it's very sad, but you can watch documentaries. When Bill Clinton got rid of welfare as we know it, there are documentaries where they interview like low-income white women in Appalachia who insist that shit is true. It's just they're a unique case, right? That they sit there and they say, oh yeah, well, it's true that most poor people are just lazy. It's true, but I'm not. I'm different. And it was really sad. And I remember seeing that. I would meet people that were white, that were very, very poor, but insisted poverty was not real except for them, right? And insisted that they should get rid of food stamps except for them, right? And it was like, it was scary. And part of that is the racial aspect, right? Part of the neoconservatism was making economics about race, right? And it's a really tragic thing. And the woke people talk about this, but they don't quite get it. They gloss over it. But the woke people talk about it. But it's true what they're saying, but they misconstrue it. But it's true, right? Is that among white conservatives, it used to be this belief that only black people got food stamps. Only black people got government assistance. And so they were all against it. And they would get food stamps and they would get government assistance and they would rely on it. But that wasn't the same thing because black people get it and they're all just lazy and they need to get a job and they're blaming racism for their problems when they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps or whatever. It is one of the most bizarre thing. I remember seeing that. And, you'd see these low-income whites that are on every social program who insist we should get rid of all the social programs and American capitalism is just great. And then there's all these lazy black people that are, and it was just, that was their argument. And it was bizarre. It was bizarre to watch. And it was part of this kind of like brainwashing, right? And part of the late Cold War normal was kind of, they talk about the busing riots and kind of the backlash of like a lot of white people were trained every time they heard anyone talk about racism in America to get defensive and angry. And it was very unfortunate. And what it was about was that part of the late Cold War normal was that Martin Luther King Day became a national holiday and affirmative action policies were enacted and the U.S. government kind of acknowledged that racism was an issue and that we needed to do something about it. But then all class struggle rhetoric, any notion of class struggle was eradicated. So you had a lot of poor whites who came along, and it's like, no one acknowledges my hardship. That's how they thought. And the Republican and conservative circles said, exactly. You know, and that was a really big part of the late Cold War normal. Was there was no talk of class struggle whatsoever. And the establishment did acknowledge that racism existed a little bit, right? And especially acknowledged that it happened in the past, but also just talked about, you know, the present trends, and that they needed to give special attention, affirmative action, etc. And so white people were kind of trained to resent that. You know, that was a big part of the late Cold War normal that I remember. It's not the same anymore. It's different, right? And that so I don't know. I mean, you're asking me to reflect on the late Cold War normal. I hope that was helpful. It is way past midnight, and I do need to get up in the morning, so I'm going to have to say goodnight. But I do encourage people, keep your eye out next week. I'm going to release the videos from the convention, right? I'm editing them and getting them all done. Keep your eye out from it. You know, we had a great convention. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who donated so we could do our convention this year. It was a tight squeeze. Next year, we're doing it in Los Angeles, and we're already going to start fundraising, and we're heading out. Next week, I'm going to put this book out, so check it out. It's based on the PowerPoint I did, How Could a Revolution in America Actually Happen? But I'm beefing it up with a lot more data and quotations and stuff like that. So we're on a roll, folks. We had a successful convention, lots of video to come. We have an amazing community of people. Shout out to everybody who was part of our workshop, our convention, our 7-day program, helped make it happen in one way or another. Everybody, thank you. I'm going to put on the closing music. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.